Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Metempsychosis by MasterSizzler. The excitement of a journey is that it is unpredictable. Would it be still fun after getting immense power? Why, of course. Follow the journey back from time into the vast world of New World, featuring a overpowered Luffy. Brian McKenzie, Warlord. Zach Travis, Warlord. Garrick Russell, Warlord. Ben Brownlee, Warlord. King Nemo, Warlord. Tristan Ward, Warlord. Adios.
Luffy and Shiraoshi rushed down to the island, carrying the bleeding Hancock amidst cheers and whistles for the crew's heroism. But the mood swiftly turned somber as they saw the princess crying loudly, cradling the wounded pirate woman. "Chopper-sama, Hancock-sama is bleeding too much," she yelled, gently laying Hancock's body on the ground as she landed. Chopper, paralyzed by the transformation, regained mobility thanks to Robin's help. "Move aside, I have to check," Chopper said, retrieving his equipment and starting to treat Hancock. He immediately noticed the severe blood loss. "Oh no, this is dangerous. I can treat her wounds easily, and her natural healing seems to be kicking in, but she's lost too much blood. We need a transfusion." Panic laced his voice as he checked Hancock's blood type. O negative. "Does anyone here have O negative blood?" Chopper asked urgently, but the Straw Hats shook their heads. Most had B or F type blood. As they inquired among the plaza crowd, people recoiled at the mention of blood. "Oh no, the country's law forbids them from giving blood to humans." "That's terrible. Will no one help?" Usopp exclaimed. "TCH, no one wants to give their blood," Zoro muttered as nervous murmurs rippled through the crowd, people exchanging wary glances. "TCH, mine is also F-type. Oi, someone please, help us by donating blood." Luffy's voice ripped through the crowd, yet no one stepped forward for the act. "Oh yes, donating blood to humans is forbidden in this country," Chopper gasped, his eyes wide with sudden remembrance. "This sucks." Amidst the tense murmurs that rippled through the crowded hall, one person stayed resolutely silent, knowing deep down what she had to do. Shiraoshi lifted her gaze to her father, his expression impassive, but she met his eyes with a look of fierce determination. The king could only nod solemnly in response. "Take mine, Chopper-sama," Shiraoshi said, shocking the crowd. "Mine is O negative." "Princess Shiraoshi. This is against the law." Low protests raised up among the crowd, yet no one had any real strength to fight her. After all, they had been saved by someone who lost her blood, fighting for them. "Shiraoshi, are you sure?" Chopper asked. "Yes, please take my blood to save Hancock-sama." "I do not care about what anyone here says," Shiraoshi said, determination shining in her eyes, though one thing. "What is it?" Chopper inquired. "Please make sure it doesn't hurt too much," Shiraoshi added with a small, sheepish smile, helping to diffuse the heavy tension. Chopper connected the needle, and Shiraoshi couldn't stifle a wince as it pierced her mermaid-tough skin, which only hindered Chopper's efforts. With the other end connected to Hancock's arm, everyone watched with bated breath as the blood slowly traveled through the tube. "Father, is this right? Should we stop them?" Fukaboshi said, even though he looked ashamed at his own words. "Let them be, Jammin," the king replied. "All these rules, laws, and traditions, what are they for? They were willing to sacrifice their own lives for our island, and yet we are afraid of giving so much as some blood. It is time that this tradition ends, and we come out of this. I am rather proud that Shiraoshi is following in her mother's footsteps, even when none of us did so." The brothers nodded at that with a smile. Seeing their sister, confident and strong, even though she was still a crybaby, made them proud. The blood traveled down the tube, reaching Hancock's arm. The crowd erupted in raucous cheers as vibrant color bloomed back into Hancock's pallid cheeks. The Straw Hats exhaled shaky, relieved sighs at the sight of their newest crewmate's recovery. Luffy's boisterous laughter rang out, easing the palpable anxiety in the room. Everyone watched with smiles on their faces, witnessing the shattering of years of rules and traditions. Yet, no one was offended. Instead, they were grateful to be alive, to breathe for another day. The straw-hatted captain stood in the midst of the battleground, radiating vibrance and shining like the sun. They longed to pray, to celebrate him, to sing of his legends. Even if this was only the beginning of his tale. "Jinbe," the captain called out, his voice cutting through the crowd's murmur. "Join my crew." "Wah!" The straw hats turned to him in shock, but no one was more astonished than Jinbe and his fellow fishmen. Some of the crew simply smiled, familiar with their captain's impulsive nature and knowing that this moment was inevitable. "Luffy, I don't know what to say. I'm honored that you think I'm worthy to join your crew, but I don't know if I can," Jinbe replied, his voice tinged with hesitation. Why not?" Luffy whined, his brows furrowing in disappointment. "I have some responsibilities I must attend to first. There are things I need to take care of," Jinbe explained, his eyes reflecting a deep sense of duty. "I promise, once I've handled them, I'll join you." Luffy pouted, his lips forming a tight line. He wanted to argue, to convince Jinbe otherwise, but the sincerity in Jinbe's gaze softened his resolve. He could see the promise there, a commitment that was as strong as the fishman's fists. "All right, I'll hold you to your promise," Luffy conceded, his voice filled with trust and anticipation. Up on the walls, the king and his ministers were deep in discussion, contemplating the fate of the prisoners. It was ultimately decided that the fishmen pirates would be employed to work for the kingdom, while the human captives would be released with a stern warning to never return to the island. "At last, this battle has concluded," the king proclaimed, his voice resonating through the plaza. "I am relieved that so many of us are safe. Yet, we have lost some precious souls in this fight, and for that, I take responsibility. It is my failing that I wasn't strong enough to protect them." Murmurs of protest rippled through the crowd, but the king raised his hands, silencing them. "Yes, it is a hard truth I must accept. But I promise you this. I will become stronger. We all will. We will ensure that this never happens again, and that I can protect all of you. This is my vow to you," he declared, his voice brimming with determination. The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted by his resolve. "With that said, it is only fitting that we celebrate our survival and give thanks to our saviors, the Straw Hat Pirates." The king looked down at the plaza, expecting to see the crew, but their ship was gone, and with it, the crew members. "Where did they go, Jammin?" the king asked, a note of surprise in his voice. "They left the plaza during your speech, my king," a minister replied. "We tried to persuade them to stay, but they declined, mentioning something about heroes not sharing food." The king blinked, taken aback. "Send someone to fetch them. Tell them about a grand feast to be held in their honor at the kingdom's auditorium. Make sure to emphasize the food," the king ordered with a hint of amusement in his voice. "Yes, my king," the minister replied, bowing deeply before hurrying away to relay the command. Turning back to the crowd, the king raised his voice, "My citizens, we will hold a grand feast to celebrate our victory and to honor our saviors. Let us celebrate this first step towards our newfound freedom." The plaza erupted in cheers, and the people began to disperse, eager to prepare dishes and entertainment for the upcoming feast. The air buzzed with excitement and gratitude, a stark contrast to the battle-worn faces of just hours ago. Meanwhile, aboard the Thousand Sunny, the Straw Hat Pirates sailed away from the island, their ship cutting smoothly through the azure waves. The crew had gathered on the deck, exchanging stories and laughter as the adrenaline of battle began to fade. "Luffy, are you sure it was okay to leave without saying a proper goodbye?" Nami asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Luffy leaned back against the mast, arms crossed behind his head, a carefree grin spreading across his face. "We go around for praise. We do what we do because it's fun and because we can't stand seeing people suffer. Besides," he added with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, "I didn't want to share my food. Heroes share their food, I don't." Nami's eyes twitched in frustration. Sanji, who was lounging nearby, smirked. "You're always thinking with your stomach, Luffy. But I suppose I could whip up something delicious to celebrate our victory." Chopper, who was sitting on a barrel, nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, and besides, we have a new crewmate with us." "Are you going to leave?" Luffy-sama?" Shirahoshi asked, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes, we have an adventure waiting for us," Luffy said enthusiastically. "But this is so soon. Why not stay for another D-Day? Or another week?" Shirahoshi asked. "Don't worry, Shirahoshi-chan. We will back. It is not like we are leaving forever," Usopp placated. As the crew tried to convince Shirahoshi, a shout from above interrupted their merriment. A ship approaching, Nami called out from the crow's nest, her eyes scanning the horizon. Everyone's attention snapped to the distant silhouette of a small boat making its way toward them. A flag bearing the crest of the island fluttered in the breeze. "It looks like they're trying to catch up to us," Nami continued, her voice carrying a note of curiosity. As the boat drew nearer, they could see a handful of soldiers aboard, waving frantically. One of them stood at the bow, holding a large conch shell-like device to his mouth. "Straw Hat Pirates." The soldier's voice boomed through the air, amplified by the device. "His Majesty the King requests your presence back at the island. He wishes to honor you with a grand feast and celebration." Luffy's eyes lit up at the mention of a feast. "A feast?" he echoed, jumping to his feet. "Why didn't you say so earlier? Let's turn around." Nami sighed, shaking her head with a smile. "You're incorrigible, Luffy. Always thinking about your stomach." The crew exchanged amused glances, each of them used to their captain's singular focus on food. But beneath their teasing, there was a shared understanding and affection for their fearless leader's simple joys. "All right," Nami said, taking the wheel. "Let's head back. I suppose a little celebration won't hurt." "Yes. Let's go. I will show you around the island and we will celebrate," Shirahoshi happily said. As the Thousand Sunny changed course and began to make its way back to the island, the mood on board was light and filled with anticipation. The promise of a feast and the warmth of newfound friends beckoned them back. The island buzzed with anticipation as preparations for the feast reached their peak. Delicious aromas wafted through the grand auditorium, where islanders scurried about, arranging food and entertainment for their saviors. The air was thick with excitement and the sweet smell of grilled seafood. The ship descended gracefully toward the entrance, where the king and his ministers stood in wait. Beside them, an unusual sight caught the crew's attention. A massive eel-like fish enclosed in a bubble, its back adorned with an ornate carriage saddle. "Welcome, Straw Hats!" The king's voice boomed across the arena. "Let the feast begin." The crowd erupted as the crew entered, their voices melding into a thunderous cheer. "It's him! That's Straw Hat! The hero has arrived! Hero! Hero! Hero!" The chant grew louder, echoing off the walls. "I am not a hero." Luffy's protest rang out, his face contorted in frustration. The thought of sharing meat with everyone, a hero's duty, clearly didn't sit well with him. As the celebration unfolded, platters of food appeared before the crew. Luffy, true to form, devoured everything in sight with his characteristic enthusiasm. While his crewmates merely rolled their eyes at the familiar sight, the chef stood slack-jawed at his impossible appetite. Yet they quickly recovered, pride pushing them to match his ravenous pace. These were professional chefs, after all, adaptability was their forte. Music filled the Colosseum, the joyous melodies intertwining with laughter and dance. The fishmen celebrated their narrow escape from death with unbridled enthusiasm, their movements embodying the very essence of their sea god's spirit. Away from the festivities, Robin silently slipped through the gates. She found the king alone, lost in contemplation of recent events. Perching herself on the railing, she gazed out at the endless sea. "Who's Joy Boy?" she asked softly, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. The king started at her sudden question, tension creeping into his posture. "That name. How do you know it?" His voice carried an edge of wariness. Robin turned to face him. "I found a poneglyph in the forest, an apology from Joy Boy to someone on this island." The king's shoulders sagged as he sighed. "The legends passed down through our royal family speak of a message meant for the mermaid princess who ruled 800 years ago. Its purpose, its meaning, they remain a mystery. 2 years ago, I read a poneglyph that hinted at something here," Robin continued, studying the king's face. "This mermaid princess. Was she known by another title?" The king's eyes widened. "The ancient weapon, Poseidon. Yes. These weapons hold the power to destroy the world. And Joy Boy. He lived during the Void Century, 8 centuries past. Then he possessed the power to control the Sea Kings? Is that why he planned to use the Noah? I'm afraid not, the king replied, shaking his head. So Shirahoshi, Robin mused, by inheriting the same powers as the ancient princess, she also inherits that name. Hidden in the shadows, unseen by either of them, a figure listened intently to every word, their presence masked by the sounds of distant celebration. The echoes of joyous music and the aroma of the grand feast still clung to the air in the grand auditorium of Ryugu Palace, but a subtle shift, a new layer of gravity, had settled upon the core of the Straw Hat Pirates. Robin, having excused herself from King Neptune, her expression a familiar blend of scholarly intrigue and quiet seriousness, sought out her captain. She found Luffy where one would typically find him after a major battle and subsequent celebration, at the heart of a rapidly diminishing mountain of food. His golden ringed eyes, a striking feature that still made newcomers do a double take, were bright with the uncomplicated joy of a satisfied appetite. Hancock, ever the picture of devotion, was meticulously arranging the choicest pieces of grilled sea king on a small plate for him, her own untouched, her gaze fixed on Luffy-sama with an adoration so profound it seemed to generate its own warmth. Sanji, caught between professional pride at Luffy's boundless capacity and a chef's exasperation, was already planning the next meal while fending off Brooke's increasingly desperate pleas for a glimpse of mermaid panties. A request the mermaid waitstaff handled with polite, if flustered, aplomb. Luffy, Robin's voice, though soft, had a certain timbre that sliced through the casual revelry. He paused, a comically large fish skewer halfway to his lips. Hancock, in a movement almost too quick to see, straightened, her posture shifting from adoring consort to vigilant protector. It wasn't an overt display of haki, not yet, but the air around her shimmered almost imperceptibly, a queen ready to defend her king. Nami, who had been excitedly discussing potential treasure yields with Usopp, and Zoro, who'd been observing the scene with a rare, almost relaxed smirk while idly cleaning Wado Ichimonji, both turned their attention. Chopper, perched on Frankie's broad shoulder, stopped mid-boast about the intricacies of mermaid anatomy. From a purely medical standpoint, of course. There is something of grave importance I believe you should all know, Robin continued, her gaze sweeping over her nakama. It concerns Princess Shirahoshi. The festive hum in their corner of the hall died down. Luffy, surprisingly, lowered the skewer. Crybaby is physically well, for the moment, Robin affirmed. However, during my study of the poneglyph in the sea forest, and in subsequent conversation with King Neptune, I have come to understand the truth of her lineage. The poneglyph spoke of Joy Boy's ancient promise, and of the mermaid princess who bears the name, Poseidon. A beat of silence, then a collective stirring. Nami's eyes widened, her mind, ever quick, immediately grasping the perilous implications. Poseidon? You don't mean, one of the ancient weapons? Precisely, Robin confirmed, her expression unreadable but for the gravity in her eyes. Shirahoshi, Crybaby, is the current incarnation of the ancient weapon Poseidon, possessing the ability to communicate with and command the Sea Kings. Usopp audibly gulped, nearly aspirating his juice. CC command Sea Kings. Our Crybaby? The giant one who cries if you look at her funny? Frankie let out a long, low whistle. Whoa, that's a super heavy-duty secret. Sis, Chopper's eyes were practically bugging out of his head. So that's why those huge fish monsters helped stop the Noah. Zoro's single eye narrowed, a flicker of keen understanding within its depths. So, that's the real treasure of this island. And its greatest vulnerability. He glanced towards Luffy. His captain had a knack for stumbling into world-shattering secrets and beings of immense power. Sanji, ever the chivalrous one, looked genuinely worried. That means, she'll be a target. The world government, Kaido, Big Mom, every power-hungry bastard out there will want to get their hands on Crybaby-chan. Hancock, however, seemed to view it through a different lens, one entirely focused on her beloved. Luffy-sama, she declared, her voice clear and carrying, though not with overt haki, more with the innate authority of an empress. It is only fitting that a man of your unparalleled magnificence would form bonds with such entities of legend. Your destiny outshines all others. Luffy finally took a bite of the skewer, chewing with a thoughtful slowness that was unusual for him. His expression was momentarily still, the boundless, chaotic energy he usually radiated drawn inward. The golden rings in his eyes seemed to shimmer, catching the light from the coral lamps. "So," he said, his voice surprisingly even, "Crybaby is super important, and a bunch of bad guys will want to use her power." "That is the unfortunate truth of the matter," Robin stated, her gaze unwavering. Luffy grunted, a deep, rumbling sound. He demolished the rest of the skewer in 2 more swift bites, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Then we'll just have to make sure no one messes with her." He looked vaguely in the direction where he'd last seen Shirahoshi, likely being coddled by her brothers or still marveling at the party. A fleeting shadow, an almost imperceptible hardening of his features, the quiet echo of the Shinigami's power, perhaps, or just the Nika-fueled protective fury honed by future knowledge, crossed his face. "She's our friend. She gave Hancock her blood when she was hurt. Anyone who tries to hurt Crybaby will have to go through me." He paused, and a very faint, almost predatory curve touched his lips. "And they really won't like that." The quiet, absolute conviction in his voice, the unspoken promise of devastating power held in reserve, sent a subtle chill through even his most seasoned crewmates. This wasn't just the brash, optimistic Luffy they knew. This was the Luffy who had stared down death and destiny, who carried the weight of experiences beyond their imagining and wielded powers that were still, in many ways, a mystery even to them. The knowledge settled upon them, a tangible presence in the festive air. The remainder of the feast, while still outwardly joyous, now carried an undercurrent of shared resolve, a silent acknowledgement of the new weight they bore. Deep within the sprawling palace, crammed into a surprisingly comfortable, if slightly dusty, antique sea chest he'd managed to wriggle into during the preceding chaos, Caribou's long, disgusting tongue twitched. His eyes, wide and veined with red, shone with a feverish, unholy greed. "Kahihihihi, ancient weapon, Poseidon, the mermaid princess, this information, it's worth more than all the gold in Mariajoy. Or perhaps, I could deliver such a prize to that certain someone, kahihihi." His mind, already warped, reeled with treacherous possibilities, utterly oblivious to the true, terrifying caliber of the protectors the young princess had unknowingly acquired. Little did he know, some people were aware of his presence, but they didn't want to leave him on the island, lest he does further issues to the kingdom. Soon enough, the time for departure arrived. The Thousand Sunny, resplendent in its fresh coating, awaited them at the palace's grand sea gate, its bubbles shimmering. Shirahoshi, predictably, was a magnificent, sniffling, sobbing spectacle, her colossal form trembling as she held onto Luffy's much smaller hand with a gentleness that belied her size. "Luffy-sama, you'll come back, won't you? You promise you'll come back and visit me and everyone?" she wailed, her voice, even choked with tears, echoing powerfully through the plaza. Luffy, despite the earlier somber mood, let out his signature, infectious, shi-shi-shi laugh, the sound bouncing off the coral architecture. "Of course, Crybaby, we're nakama, and friends always see each other again, you know." He had to stretch, a feat even for his rubbery limbs, to pat her enormous, tear-streaked cheek. "And hey, listen up, you're Poseidon, right? Robin told us. That means you're secretly super strong, even if you cry a lot. So if anyone, tries to give you trouble, you just think of us. Think of me. I'll know. And I'll come kick their butt so fast, they won't know what hit him." His golden eyes met hers, filled with an unshakable, almost divine certainty that seemed to pierce through her fear and bring a watery, hesitant smile to her lips. King Neptune, Fukaboshi, Ryuboshi, and Manboshi stood nearby, their expressions a complex tapestry of profound gratitude, lingering worry, and solemn respect. Jinbe was there too, his massive, reassuring presence a silent promise. He wasn't officially rejoining yet, having crucial matters to attend to concerning Fishman Island's future stability and its relationship with Big Mom, but his oath to Luffy was as solid as the seafloor. "Straw Hat Luffy Dono, and all members of the valiant Straw Hat Pirates," King Neptune began, his voice thick with emotion as he performed a deep, formal bow, his sons mirroring him. "The debt Fishman Island owes your crew is immeasurable. Words are insufficient to express our gratitude for the salvation of our home, our people, and our princess, Jammin." He gestured towards a line of royal attendants, who respectfully presented several large, ornate chests. "We have prepared some essential supplies for your perilous journey into the new world, and a humble token of our kingdom's treasure. Please, accept it with our deepest, most heartfelt thanks." Ooh, treasure, and food for the trip. Luffy's eyes instantly lit up, his earlier gravity evaporating like sea foam, replaced by the gleeful anticipation of a child on Christmas morning. Nami's eyes, predictably, transformed into glowing berry symbols. As the crew began to inspect the generous gifts, King Neptune approached Nami with a separate, smaller, intricately carved wooden box. "Navigator Dono," he said gravely, "your standard log pose will be all but useless in the Grand Line's final sea. The magnetic fields are far too chaotic." He opened the box to reveal a larger, more complex device with not one, but 3 compass needles, is a new world log pose. It is essential for navigating those waters. Once you reach an island with a stable enough magnetic field, the 3 needles will each lock onto a different island, offering you a choice of paths. Nami took the log pose with a reverent expression, already fascinated by its mechanics. "Thank you, Kincredible. I've read about these, but I've never seen one up close." While Nami was examining her new navigational tool, Luffy peered over her shoulder, his curiosity piqued. The 3 needles were currently quivering erratically within their casing. "Whoa, 3 needles!" Luffy exclaimed. "Does that mean 3 times the adventure?" King Neptune chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound. "In a manner of speaking, Straw Hat Dono. Each path will present its own unique challenges. Some will be more perilous than others. The log pose will guide you, but the choice of which path to take, that will be yours." He looked meaningfully at Luffy. "Be warned, the new world is not forgiving." Luffy just grinned wider. Shi, sounds like fun. The farewells were genuinely warm. The citizens of Fishman Island, no longer cowering in fear of pirates, now cheered them on as liberators, their saviors. As the Thousand Sunny began its graceful ascent, a trail of shimmering bubbles marking its path, Luffy stood at the prow, the upward current whipping through his shaggy black hair. Hancock was, as a matter of course, by his side, her arm linked lightly through his, a soft, contented smile gracing her lips as she shared this departure with him. "To the new world," Luffy roared, punching the air with unrestrained enthusiasm, his voice echoing within the confines of the bubble. "Yeah," the crew chorused, their own excitement a palpable force. The journey upwards was noticeably smoother, less fraught with peril than their descent. Inside the Sunny, the atmosphere was a heady mix of eager anticipation and the subtle, lingering weight of Robin's revelation. Nami was already studying the new world log pose, her brow furrowed in concentration. "So," Usopp mused, carefully tending to one of his new popgreen seeds, "we're basically sailing off with the classified location of 1/3 of the world's most dangerous WMDs. No biggie, right? Just another Tuesday for the Straw Hats." Frankie struck a dramatic pose, his metallic body gleaming. "It just means our adventure is gonna be even more SUUUUPER legendary, bro." Nami sighed, tapping the glass of the new log pose. "The needles are still going crazy. We need to reach the surface and find an island with a more stable field before this thing is any use." Zoro grinned, a predatory light in his single eye, his hand instinctively resting on the hilts of his swords. "It's been too long since we faced some real challenges." Luffy gazed upwards towards the shimmering, distorted light of the surface that marked the threshold to the final sea. The new world. The domain of the Yonko. The direct route to Laugh-Tale. His golden-ringed eyes held a universe of unwavering resolve. The knowledge of Crybaby's true nature was just another piece of the grand, chaotic puzzle, another monumental responsibility he'd shouldered with the same casual ease with which he devoured a banquet. His path was starkly, incandescently clear. Protect his Nakama, become the king of the pirates, and unleash the dawn that Joy Boy, and now Nika, had promised the world. His bracelet, the unassuming band that could transform into his formidable bow staff or a gleaming sword, felt warm against his wrist, a silent, comforting thrum of power, eager for the trials to come. The Thousand Sunny breached the surface with a geyser-like eruption of water, the coating bubble bursting with a sound like a cannon shot. Fresh, briny, and utterly chaotic air instantly filled their lungs. They were met not with a tranquil ocean vista, but with a breathtaking, terrifying panorama of meteorological warfare. The sky was a canvas of violent contradictions. To starboard, jagged bolts of black lightning clawed at the heavens from clouds the color of bruised plums. To port, the sea itself seemed to be ablaze, vast swaths of water burning with an eerie, crimson flame that reflected a blood-red sky. Directly ahead, hailstones the size of cannonballs plummeted from an unnaturally clear patch of sky into a churning, maelstrom-like sea. "Whoa! This is incredible," Luffy shrieked, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated excitement, his body practically vibrating with eagerness. This was what he lived for. Nami was already barking orders, her voice cutting through the roar of wind and waves, simultaneously trying to shield the New World log pose. "Everyone, secure the rigging, Sanji-kun. Double-check the galley. Lash everything down, Zoro, Usopp. Give me a hand with these storm sails. This is it, people, the New World's welcoming party." She held up the New World log pose, her expression a mixture of frustration and awe. After what felt like an eternity of being battered by freak waves, dodging rogue icebergs that seemed to materialize from nowhere, and sailing through patches of inexplicably boiling water, Nami finally let out a cry of triumph over the howling wind. "They're settling. The needles are settling." Everyone who could spare a moment from battling the elements crowded around her, peering at the strange log pose. Sure enough, the three needles, which had been vibrating like hummingbird wings, were now slowly, but surely, pointing in three distinct directions. The first needle pointed towards a region where the sea seemed relatively calm, though the sky above it was an ominous, swirling green. The second needle pointed towards an area marked by towering, active volcanoes spewing black smoke and molten rock into the air. The third needle, however, was behaving differently. It wasn't just pointing, it was vibrating intensely, shaking back and forth as if drawn by an incredibly powerful, unstable force. The island it indicated was shrouded in a perpetual electrical storm, lightning constantly striking the dark, jagged landmass visible in the far distance. Nami bit her lip. "Okay, the first one looks manageable, I guess. The second is clearly volcanic and dangerous. But this third one," she tapped the glass above the violently shaking needle. "The more a needle shakes, the more dangerous and unpredictable the island's magnetic field is. That usually means more extreme conditions and generally a really bad idea to go there first." Usopp shuddered, looking at the distant, lightning-scarred island. "Yeah, let's, not pick the super shaky, doom and gloom island, Nami." Chopper nodded vigorously. Don't go to scary island, disease is acting up." Luffy, however, had leaned in, his golden-ringed eyes fixed on the third, wildly vibrating needle. A huge grin spread across his face. She, that one," he declared, pointing decisively at the shaking needle. Luffy, no, Nami, Usopp, and Chopper yelled in unison. "Are you crazy?" Nami shrieked. "I just said that's the most dangerous one, it's practically screaming, stay away." Luffy just tilted his head, his grin unwavering. "But it's shaking the most. That means it's gonna be the most exciting adventure, right? Where's the fun in going somewhere boring?" Zoro chuckled, a smirk playing on his lips. "He's got a point. The crazier the better." Robin smiled serenely. "An unpredictable path often leads to the most interesting discoveries, Captain San." Sanji sighed, lighting a cigarette despite the spray. "Well, guess I better stock up on ingredients for a lightning-proof feast. That damn Marimo is right for once." Hancock beamed. "Wherever Luffy-sama wishes to go, that is where our adventure lies. It will surely be a path worthy of his greatness." Frankie gave a thumbs up from the helm, which he was still wrestling. "You got it, Captain, setting course for the SUUUPER shaky island of shocking doom." Nami buried her face in her hands, groaning, but a small, exasperated smile played on her lips. This was her captain. This was her crew. The New World wouldn't know what hit it. With a sigh that was equal parts resignation and thrill, she began to calculate their new, incredibly perilous course. The Thousand Sunny, under Frankie's super guidance and Nami's increasingly stressed navigation, plowed through the turbulent waters towards the island of perpetual storms. The general chaos of the New World's entry point began to coalesce into a more focused, localized tempest as they drew nearer their destination. The sky above the island was a constant, violent canvas of black, bruised clouds, from which lightning didn't just strike, but danced a relentless, terrifying ballet of pure energy. The air itself crackled with an almost painful intensity. "We're getting close," Nami shouted over a deafening thunderclap that vibrated through the Sunny's planks. "The magnetic field is going absolutely haywire. Frankie, be ready for anything." "Roger that, Navigator Sis," Frankie bellowed back, his knuckles white on the helm. "This island's got some serious personality." Luffy stood on the figurehead, his straw hat secured tightly, his golden-ringed eyes wide with unadulterated glee, despite the spray and the violent lurching of the ship. "Whoa! Look at that one, Zoro," it was purple. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning, thicker than the Sunny's main mast and radiating an almost sentient fury, arced from the churning sky. It wasn't aimed at the island's peaks, nor did it strike the sea. It came screaming directly for the Thousand Sunny. "Incoming! Dead ahead!" Nami shrieked, her face ashen. Before anyone else could fully react, a blur of white flame erupted on the deck. Luffy, his laughter echoing even over the deafening cracked THOOM of the approaching bolt, was already in his Nika form. His usual carefree grin was present, but his eyes held a sharp, focused intensity. The simple bracelet on his wrist shimmered, light gathering around it, and in an instant, it expanded, flowing like quicksilver into a gleaming, surprisingly large buckler shield, already rippling with the dark sheen of advanced armament hockey. Shi, let's play, Zappy Island. He leapt into the air, positioning himself directly in the lightning's path, shield raised. The colossal bolt struck the hockey-infused surface with an impact that sent a shockwave across the water, making the Sunny groan and shudder violently. But instead of exploding or shattering the shield, the raw, untamed energy of the lightning seemed to bend and swirl around it. Brilliant white and blue arcs of electricity coursed over the buckler, some seemingly absorbed into its hockey-coated surface, others deflected harmlessly into the sea, where they exploded in plumes of steam. Luffy landed back on deck, his Nika form wreathed in residual sparks and smoke, the shield shrinking back into a bracelet. He shook his head, letting out a whoosh of air. Whoa, that one really tingled, stronger than the ones at sea. The crew stared, a mixture of awe, relief, and residual terror on their faces. Usopp, who had dived for cover, peeked out. Luffy, you just had a wrestling match with a lightning bolt the size of a sea king. Hancock, who had instinctively moved to protect Luffy before realizing he was already handling it, had a hand to her chest, her eyes shining. Magnificent, Luffy-sama. Even the island's furious welcome cannot faze your divine power. Zoro grunted, a flicker of approval in his eye. Getting better at using that thing. Sanji, recovering his balance, whistled. That could have fried us all. Nice save, Captain. Nami let out a shaky breath. Okay, so the island is actively trying to kill us before we even set foot on it. Good to know. Frankie, who had fought to keep the Sunny steady through the shockwave, yelled, Navigator sis. That last blast cleared some of the storm haze to starboard. I think I see a potential inlet. It's tight, and the current looks like a beast. But it might be our only shot to get out of this open bombardment. Do it, Frankie, Nami yelled back, already trying to recalculate their approach through the raging, now demonstrably hostile, sea. Everyone, hold on. With a super surge from the coup de burst, a carefully controlled mini-1, just for maneuvering through the treacherous currents near the island, Frankie expertly guided the Thousand Sunny through a narrow, foam-choked passage between towering, obsidian cliffs that seemed to drink the light. Lightning continued to strike the cliff tops around them with terrifying frequency, illuminating grotesque rock formations and sending showers of stone cascading into the churning water. They emerged into a surprisingly calmer, though still dark, circular bay. The water here was an unnatural, deep indigo, almost black, and unnervingly still compared to the chaos outside. The island rose sharply around them, its peaks lost in the swirling, electrified clouds far above. Strange, metallic-looking plants clung to the rocks, faintly glowing with an inner light, casting an eerie luminescence on the scene. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something else, something ancient and mineral, and a low, pervasive hum resonated through the very hull of the ship, a palpable thrum of immense, restrained power. Whoa, Luffy breathed, his adventurous spirit undimmed, in fact, further ignited. This place is super awesome. Chopper, however, having witnessed the direct lightning assault and the perilous entry, promptly slid down the mast in a faint. Usopp wasn't far behind, muttering about needing a change of everything and perhaps a new career. Sanji, ever the pragmatist, lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his tense face before he schooled his features. Well, at least we're not being actively smote out in the open anymore. For now, I'll see what I can whip up. Welcome to the island of eternal bad vibes and aggressive weather patterns special. Robin stepped to the railing, her eyes scanning the bizarre flora and the structure of the bay. The rock formations, they almost look carved or shaped by unnatural forces. And these plants, their luminescence might be a biological reaction to the constant electrical charge in the atmosphere, or perhaps they even contribute to it. Alright, Luffy declared, cracking his knuckles, the earlier confrontation with the lightning only fueling his excitement. Let's go exploring. Who knows what kinda cool monsters and treasure are here. Nami sighed, massaging her temples. Luffy, can we at least try to be cautious? That lightning bolt wasn't exactly a welcome mat. This island is practically screaming, high-voltage death trap, in a language even you should understand. Yeah, Luffy beamed. Danger means adventure. Frankie powered down the Sunny's main engines. Ship's secure for now. Captain, I'll stay aboard with Usopp and Chopper. Try to get him conscious, and run some diagnostics. This island's got some super weird energy signatures I want to check out with my sensors. That lightning earlier was off the charts. Luffy nodded. Okay, so, landing party will be me, Zoro, Sanji, Robin, Nami, and Hancock. Let's go find the source of all this shaky lightning. He pointed towards a particularly dark and ominous-looking ravine that seemed to lead deeper into the island's heart, from which an even more intense crackling sound emanated, almost like a rhythmic pulse. With a whoop, Luffy leapt ashore, followed closely by Zoro, Sanji, a curious Robin, a very reluctant Nami, and a composed Hancock. The ground beneath their boots was a strange, compacted dust that glittered faintly, and the air grew heavier with each step, the taste of ozone sharp on their tongues. The ground itself seemed to vibrate subtly with the ceaseless, unseen power of the island. The ravine walls rose high on either side, damp and slick. Metallic, glowing plants Robin had noted earlier grew in greater profusion here, their eerie light casting dancing shadows and providing the only illumination. This place gives me the creeps, Nami muttered again, her hand gripping her Klimatak tightly. The log pose on her wrist was still a blur of motion. She. It's like a spooky treasure cave, Luffy exclaimed, unbothered. As they ventured deeper, Robin paused, touch engine wall. Look here. These aren't natural erosion patterns. Faint, almost imperceptible lines crisscrossed the rock, forming vast, geometric shapes, as if the ravine itself was part of some colossal, ancient machinery, or a deliberately carved channel. Strange, dark veins, distinct from the rock, pulsed with a faint blue light within the walls, seemingly in time with that distant, rhythmic crackling. It was less like random lightning now, and more like a colossal, electrical heartbeat. This island, Robin murmured, her eyes alight with scholarly fascination. It feels less like a natural landmass and more like a constructed artifice. Or perhaps a hibernating colossal being. Sanji shivered, despite himself. Don't say things like that, Robin Schwan, you'll give Nami-san nightmares. I'm already having them, Nami retorted, though her scientific curiosity was clearly piqued despite her fear. Hancock walked with a quiet dignity, her observation haki keenly attuned to their surroundings. The energy here is immense, Luffy-sama. It feels controlled, yet barely contained. As if something powerful is sleeping, or waiting. Her gaze was sharp, missing nothing, her earlier awe now tempered with a queen's wariness. Zoro grunted in agreement, his hand never far from his swords. Whatever's making that noise, it's big, and strong. Luffy, however, just grinned wider. Sleeping? Waiting? Let's go wake it up. He charged further into the deepening gloom, the promise of an unknown, powerful force drawing him onward like a moth to a very dangerous, very exciting flame. The ravine twisted and turned, descending further into the island's depths. The metallic, glowing flora became sparser, the air colder, and the rhythmic, electrical thrumming grew more insistent, resonating not just in their ears but deep within their chests. The blue pulsing veins in the rock walls were thicker here, like the arteries of some colossal, slumbering beast. Nami, despite her fear, found herself fascinated by the strange energy readings her log pose was giving off, even if it was still unusable for navigation. The energy isn't just chaotic, she murmured, more to herself than anyone, it's patterned. Like a complex circuit. But on a scale I can't even comprehend. Sanji kept a close watch, his senses on high alert. Whatever's down here, it's making the hairs on my neck stand up. And not in a good way, like when Nami Swan or Robin Schwan look at me. He glanced protectively at them. Suddenly, the ravine opened dramatically into a vast, subterranean cavern. The sheer scale of it stole their breath. The ceiling was lost in oppressive darkness far above, but the chamber itself was not entirely dark. In the center, dominating the cavern, was a colossal, spherical structure, easily several hundred meters in diameter. It was crafted from the same dark, metallic material as the veins in the walls, and it pulsed with an intense, rhythmic blue light, perfectly in sync with the electrical heartbeat they'd been feeling. Countless thick, vein-like conduits snaked from the sphere, burrowing into the cavern walls in every direction, disappearing into the rock. This was undoubtedly the heart of the island's power. Strange, geometric patterns, glowing with a softer blue light, adorned the surface of the sphere, shifting and flowing like intricate clockwork. The air around it crackled audibly with raw energy, and miniature bolts of lightning occasionally danced across its surface before being reabsorbed. The ground beneath their feet was a perfectly smooth, polished surface, clearly artificial. By the Sea Kings. Nami breathed, her fear momentarily eclipsed by sheer awe. What is that thing? Robin's eyes were wide, reflecting the pulsating blue light. Incredible. This is no mere geological formation. This is technology. Ancient, and on a scale I've never encountered, not even in the poneglyphs' descriptions of the ancient kingdom's creations. She stepped forward slowly, her gaze sweeping the chamber. The air is saturated with energy. It feels like a power plant. Or perhaps a colossal battery. Or a giant, zappy gumball machine, Luffy declared, his eyes sparkling with an almost manic excitement. He took a step towards the sphere, an irresistible curiosity pulling him forward. Luffy, wait, Hancock cautioned, her voice tight with a rare note of apprehension. While she had no doubt of Luffy's power, the sheer, overwhelming energy emanating from the sphere was on another level entirely. It felt ancient, primordial, and utterly indifferent. Zoro's hand was firmly on Shisui's hilt. This thing. It's definitely what's making the island shake. It feels like it could wake up at any second. He scanned the cavern for any sign of guardians, but the chamber was eerily still, save for the rhythmic pulse of the sphere. Sanji positioned himself slightly in front of Nami and Robin. Don't get too close, you three. That thing is practically humming, instant electrocution. As they watched, a section of the glowing patterns on the sphere seemed to coalesce, forming larger, more distinct symbols. They were unlike any language Robin had seen before, yet they possessed an undeniable sense of meaning, of intelligent design. It's responding to our presence, Robin whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Or, at least, it's aware of us. Luffy, however, was already halfway to the sphere. Oi, big round zappy thing. Are you treasure? Or are you gonna give us a super adventure? Luffy, you idiot, don't just talk to it, Nami shrieked, but it was too late. As Luffy approached within a certain radius, perhaps 20 meters, the rhythmic pulsing of the sphere intensified. The blue light flared, and a low, resonant hum filled the cavern, vibrating through their very bones. The ground beneath them began to tremble more noticeably. Then, from the polished floor surrounding the sphere, multiple sections began to glow with red light. With a series of heavy, grinding clicks, dozens of metallic constructs, each about the size of a pacifista but leaner and more insectoid in design, rose from hidden compartments in the floor. Their single, glowing red optics focused on Luffy, and then swiveled to encompass the rest of the Straw Hats. They had no faces, no expressions, just cold, efficient menace. Automated defenses, Robin stated, her voice calm despite the sudden appearance of the formidable-looking guardians. Logical. Such a power source would undoubtedly be protected. Zoro grinned, drawing Shisui and Wado Ichimonji. Sandai Kitetsu appeared in his other hand. Finally, some real action. Sanji dropped his cigarette, crushing it under his heel. Took him long enough. Guess the welcoming committee is here. His leg began to heat up, Diable Hambi ready. Hancock stepped forward, her posture shifting from observer to empress. These soulless contraptions dare impede Luffy-sama? They shall be shattered. The metallic guardians raised their appendages, which ended in what looked like energy cannons, all aimed at Luffy. Luffy just cracked his knuckles, his Nika flames beginning to flicker around him, that familiar wide, reckless grin spreading across his face. Shi. So it is an adventure. Alright, Tin Can Brigade, who wants to play first? The lead insectoid guardians, their red optics zeroed in on Luffy's Nika flamed form, whirred and clicked. Without warning, their cannon appendages glowed with intense heat, and they unleashed a volley of concentrated energy blasts. Searing beams of crimson light that shrieked through the air. Shi. Fireworks, Luffy laughed, his body becoming impossibly fluid. Instead of dodging in a conventional sense, he stretched and warped, his Nika form allowing for cartoonish contortions. One beam, aimed at his head, saw him simply detach his flaming hair like a wig, letting the blast pass through the empty space before his head snapped back into place with a comical sproing. Another beam he caught with a comically oversized, hockey-infused white-gloved hand, squeezing it unsoaked bubble. A third he simply opened his mouth wide and seemingly swallowed, letting out a satisfied, fiery burp that smelled vaguely of ozone and burnt sugar. He's playing with them, Nami stammered, a bead of sweat tracing its way down her temple. That's Luffy for you, Sanji said with a wry grin, already launching himself forward. He finds a way to have fun even when giant death robots are trying to vaporize him. Diable Hambi. Flambage shot, his leg, wreathed in fire, connected with the side of a guardian, sending it crashing into two others with a screech of tortured metal. Zoro was a whirlwind of steel. Santoryu. Onigiri. He met a trio of advancing guardians head-on, his three swords biting deep into their metallic hides, shearing through armor plating as if it were paper. Sparks flew as he pushed through them, leaving a trail of bisected, sparking automatons in his wake. Tougher than they look, he grunted, a pleased glint in his eye. Hancock moved with a grace that was both beautiful and deadly. When a guardian lunged at her, its pincer-like claws extended, she didn't even flinch. Her eyes, cold and imperious, met its single red optic. Slave arrow. With a delicate gesture, she blew a kiss, from which a barrage of heart-shaped projectiles flew, striking the guardian. The machine froze mid-lunge, its metallic surface rapidly turning to stone before shattering under its own momentum. Mere puppets, she declared, though her gaze flickered towards Luffy, ensuring he wasn't overwhelmed. Robin, ever the strategist, had already used her powers. Cien Fleur. Spider net. A web of arms erupted from the cavern floor, entangling the legs of several guardians, momentarily throwing them off balance and disrupting their coordinated advance. Their joints seem to be a vulnerability, Nami-san, and their optical sensors are quite exposed. Nami, taking a deep breath, nodded. Right, okay. Less panicking, more zapping. She unslung her Klima-tact, extending it. They're metal, right? And this place is full of weird energy. She spotted a cluster of guardians advancing on Sanji from his flank. Mirage tempo. Several illusory Namis appeared, drawing the guardians' fire for a crucial second. Sanji-kun, now. Thanks, Nami Swan, Sanji yelled, spinning to deliver a devastating kick to the distracted machines. The battle raged. The guardians were indeed resilient. Their energy blasts were powerful, and they possessed surprising speed and agility for their size. Some even deployed crackling energy shields that absorbed initial hits. Luffy, in his element, bounced around the cavern like a supercharged pinball, his laughter echoing. He'd grab a guardian by its legs, spin it around like a hammer throw, Gomu Gomu no Nika hammer, sending it crashing into its brethren. He stretched his flaming Nika arm to absurd lengths, snatching energy blasts out of the air and redirecting them, sometimes accidentally, sometimes with surprising precision. The colossal sphere in the center of the cavern seemed to react to the escalating conflict. Its rhythmic blue pulsing quickened, the light flaring with each major impact. The intricate patterns on its surface shifted more rapidly, almost agitatedly. Small arcs of lightning, larger now, began to leap from its surface, not just back onto itself, but occasionally lashing out into the cavern, forcing even the Straw Hats to dodge. One such bolt struck a guardian that Zoro was about to cleave, causing it to explode prematurely. "Oi, that one was mine," Zoro complained, deflecting a stray piece of shrapnel with Wado Ichimonji. "It appears our host is becoming restless," Robin observed, sprouting an eye on a nearby wall to get a better vantage point. The energy output from the sphere is increasing. Luffy, meanwhile, had punched his way through a dozen guardians and was now directly beneath the colossal sphere, craning his neck to look up at its immense, pulsating underbelly. "Hey, Big Zapper. Are these your toys? They're pretty fun, but they break easy." As if in response to his taunt, the low hum from the sphere deepened into a ground-shaking thrum. The remaining guardians suddenly froze, their red optics blinking. Then, with a unified, chilling screech of metal, they began to glow, their internal energy cores overloading. "They're going to self-destruct," Nami screamed, her eyes wide with horror. "Everyone, take cover." Before the Straw Hats could fully react, the Guardians exploded in a series of blinding, concussive blasts that rocked the cavern. The cavern was plunged into a maelstrom of fire, shrapnel, and blinding light as the remaining Guardians detonated in a chain reaction. The force of the synchronized explosions was immense, far greater than their individual attacks. The very foundations of the island seemed to groan under the assault, and dust and debris rained down from the unseen ceiling far above. "Armament! Full body hardening," Zoro roared, becoming a black statue of resolve, his swords crossed before him to deflect the worst of the blast wave heading his way. Even so, the force skidded him back several meters across the polished floor. Sanji, reacting with incredible speed, had grabbed Nami and Robin. "Skywalk!" he yelled, leaping high into the air, using the concussive force from below to gain even more altitude, shielding the two women with his own body as much as possible. He gritted his teeth as superheated fragments of metal whizzed past. Hancock, with a regal shout, had created a wide, concave shield of petrified air using a rapidly expanded, perfume femur, deflecting a significant portion of an explosion that threatened to engulf her. The shockwave still buffeted her, but her hockey-infused defense held firm. Luffy, right in the thick of it, was a chaotic spectacle. His Nika form seemed to thrive in the mayhem. Gomu Gomu no Nika balloon. He inflated himself to a ridiculous, disproportionate size, his flaming white form becoming a gigantic, surprisingly resilient bouncy ball. Debris and shockwaves slammed into him, sending him careening around the cavern like a fiery comet, his characteristic laughter, though slightly muffled, still echoing. She, bouncy boom. He absorbed a tremendous amount of punishment, his rubbery, mythically enhanced body dissipating the force in comical wobbles and stretches. When the immediate chaos subsided, the cavern was thick with acrid smoke and the smell of burnt metal and ozone. The polished floor was now scarred and littered with the twisted, smoking remains of the Guardians. "Everyone. Okay," Nami coughed, as Sanji gently set her and Robin down. Her ears were ringing. "Relatively speaking," Robin replied, dusting herself off, her eyes already scanning the colossal sphere. That was a rather emphatic way to clear the board. "TCH. Cheap shot," Zoro grumbled, relaxing his stance, though his senses remained on high alert. "A few cuts and bruises, nothing more." "My apologies, Nami Swan, Robin Schwan, for the rough landing," Sanji said, though he too was inspecting the sphere, a grim look on his face. "That wasn't just a self-destruct. That was a full-on purge." Hancock glided gracefully over to Luffy, who was now deflating with a loud, wet raspberry sound, still chuckling. "Luffy-sama, are you unharmed?" she asked, though her observation haki had already told her he was, incredibly, fine. She. That was fun. Like 1,000 garp punches all at once, but more explodey," Luffy grinned, shaking off some lingering sparks. The colossal sphere, however, had changed. The intense blue pulsing had momentarily ceased after the explosions, leaving it dark and inert for a heart-stopping second. Then, with a low, resonating thrum that seemed to penetrate their very souls, it began to glow again, but differently. The light was still blue, but deeper, almost violet, and the intricate patterns on its surface were no longer shifting in their previous clockwork rhythm. Now, they flowed like liquid light, coalescing into a single, massive, eye-like symbol directly facing Luffy, who was still standing relative L. The eye seemed to focus. "It's looking at us," Nami whispered, a fresh wave of unease washing over her. Or specifically, at Luffy. "Its energy signature has altered significantly," Robin observed, her voice hushed with a mixture of scholarly intrigue and caution. The previous output felt like an automated defense system. This feels more like direct, conscious attention. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate more intensely, not with the uncontrolled tremors of an earthquake, but with a steady, powerful rhythm. The very air in the cavern grew heavy, charged with an almost unbearable pressure. The miniature lightning bolts that had previously danced across the sphere's surface ceased. Instead, a single, massive tendril of pure white energy, shot through with veins of the same deep violet, extended slowly from the center of the eye symbol, like a probing antenna or a colossal, ethereal finger. It snaked through the air, silently, purposefully, directly towards Luffy. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Hancock shouted in unison, moving to intercept. "Get back!" Luffy yelled, holding up a hand, his Nika flames flaring brighter. His usual grin was gone, replaced by a look of intense concentration, his golden-ringed eyes fixed on the approaching energy tendril. He wasn't afraid, but he sensed this was different from the mindless attacks of the Guardians. This felt like a communication, or a test. The tendril stopped a mere meter from Luffy's face. It pulsed with an almost gentle light, and the immense pressure in the cavern seemed to center around them. The other Straw Hats froze, sensing the strange, almost delicate standoff. Luffy, still in his Nika form, reached out a flaming white hand, slowly, cautiously, towards the tip of the energy tendril. His own internal devil fruit energy, the essence of the sun god Nika, felt like it was resonating with the ancient power emanating from the sphere. "What are you?" Luffy asked, his voice surprisingly calm and even. As his fingers were about to touch the tendril, the eye on the sphere pulsed brightly. The tendril didn't attack, nor did it retreat. Instead, it dissolved into a shower of shimmering, violet-white particles that gently enveloped Luffy. For a moment, Luffy was completely obscured by the swirling light. The other Straw Hats tensed, ready to leap into action, but something held them back, a sense that this was a pivotal, almost sacred moment. Then, the light began to recede, not dissipating, but rather seeming to flow into Luffy. His Nika flames burned with an almost blinding intensity, and the golden rings in his eyes seemed to glow with an inner light that matched the sphere's. He stood still, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something no one else could hear. The patterns on the sphere flowed and shifted rapidly, mirroring the energy coursing into him. When the last of the particulate light had been absorbed, Luffy blinked. He looked at his hands, then around the cavern, then back at the sphere. A slow, thoughtful, and very un-Luffy-like expression crossed his face. "So, that's what you are," he murmured, so softly only those closest could hear. He then looked back at his crew, and his usual bright, carefree grin returned, though there was a new depth to his eyes. Shi. This is gonna be interesting." Before anyone could ask what had happened, the colossal sphere pulsed once more, a deep, resonant hum that felt less like a threat and more like an acknowledgement. Then, with a series of complex, grinding sounds from deep within, a section of the cavern wall opposite the Straw Hats began to glow. The rock itself seemed to turn translucent, revealing a massive, sealed doorway or portal, its surface covered in the same flowing, alien symbols as the sphere. The eye on the sphere shifted its focus from Luffy to the newly revealed portal. The message was unspoken but clear. "It wants us to go through there?" Nami asked, pointing a trembling finger. "It would appear so," Robin said, her gaze fixed on the portal. "The sphere, or whatever intelligence guides it, has deemed us worthy, or perhaps it simply wishes to guide us towards its purpose." Luffy bounced on the balls of his feet. A new door? That means a new adventure behind it. What did I tell ya? He started towards the glowing portal. Come on, everyone, let's see what other cool stuff this island has. Zoro sheathed his swords with a sigh. Just when I thought we were done with glowing ancient weirdness for the day. Sanji flicked his lighter. As long as there's no more self-destructing robots, I'm game. Maybe there's a kitchen through there. Hancock smiled softly. Wherever Luffy-sama leads, I shall follow. This island clearly recognizes his exceptional nature. The remaining Straw Hats, a mixture of apprehension, excitement, and weary resignation, began to follow their captain towards the mysterious, glowing portal. Leaving the cavern of the colossal sphere behind them, the air still thrumming with its ancient, enigmatic power. Luffy, practically vibrating with anticipation, was the first to reach the newly revealed portal. The light emanating from it was a soft, ethereal blue, similar to the sphere's initial glow, but imbued with a faint, inviting warmth. The alien symbols on its surface seemed to flow like water, occasionally coalescing into patterns that, while unreadable, hinted at immense complexity and age. Shi. It's like a giant TV screen to another adventure, Luffy exclaimed, pressing his hand against the portal's surface. It felt surprisingly smooth, like polished obsidian, yet yielded slightly to his touch, rippling like the surface of a calm pond. Be careful, Luffy, Nami called out, hurrying to catch up. The others closed behind. We have no idea what's on the other side. It could be anything, more robots, a vacuum, a room full of angry badgers. Ooh, angry badgers sound fun, Luffy replied, already starting to push his way through. Knowing our luck, it's probably all three, Sanji muttered, adjusting his jacket. He sniffed the air near the portal. Doesn't smell like badgers, at least. Or kitchens, unfortunately. Robin approached the portal with intense curiosity, her fingers gently tracing the flowing symbols. The energy signature is remarkably stable, far more so than the raw output of the sphere itself. It feels like a controlled conduit. The craftsmanship, it's exquisite. The way these symbols interact, it's almost organic, living language. She paused, a thoughtful expression on her face. There were rumors, old whispers among scholars who dared to delve into forbidden history, of world gates, constructs left by an ancient civilization capable of traversing immense distances, or perhaps even dimensions. Most dismissed them as fantasy. World gates, huh? Zoro grunted, peering at the portal. So, less a door, more a shortcut. He tapped it with the pommel of Wado Ichimonji. The surface rippled more intensely. Hancock observed the portal with a keen eye. The sphere seemed to awaken more fully after our battle, and specifically after Luffy-sama interacted with its energy. Perhaps this portal, and whatever lies beyond, requires a certain catalyst, or a compatible energy signature to activate. She glanced meaningfully at Luffy, who was now halfway through the rippling surface, his Nika flames leaving faint, shimmering trails. Well, no point standing around gawking, Luffy's muffled voice came from the other side. It's super cool in here, come on. With varying degrees of enthusiasm and trepidation, the rest of the Straw Hats followed. Stepping through the portal was a strange sensation. For a brief moment, there was a feeling of weightlessness, a gentle pressure in their ears, and a cascade of swirling, multicolored lights, like sailing through a nebula. Then, just as suddenly, they were stepping out onto solid ground. They found themselves in a vast, cylindrical chamber, even larger than the one housing the sphere. The walls were lined with the same dark, metallic material, but here, unlit panels and what looked like thousands of recessed alcoves, each holding an object shrouded in a shimmering, translucent stasis field. The air was cool, still, and carried the faint scent of ancient dust and ozone. Dominating the center of this new chamber was not another sphere, but a colossal, tree-like structure. Its trunk was thick, easily 20 meters in diameter, formed of the same dark metal, and it rose to an incredible height, branching out far above into the darkness where the ceiling should be. Along its trunk and branches, countless fiber optic-like cables pulsed with the same soft, blue light as the portal, creating a mesmerizing, living tapestry of energy. Suspended among the higher branches, like giant, crystalline fruit, were several smaller spheres, each glowing faintly. But what truly captured their attention was the state of the chamber itself. One entire side was a scene of utter devastation. Massive sections of the wall were scorched, melted, and twisted as if by unimaginable heat. Other areas were encased in thick, jagged formations of black ice, so cold that frost continually formed and crackled around them. The line between the intense heat damage and the supernatural cold was stark, a clear demarcation of two opposing, cataclysmic forces having clashed. Patches of the floor were buckled and shattered, and some of the stasis alcoves on that side were broken, their contents either destroyed or missing. Whoa! Luffy breathed, his earlier excitement tempered by the sheer scale of the destruction. What happened here? Looks like a giant had a fight with a giant ice cube. Nami gasped, her eyes wide as she took in the devastation. This damage, it's not ancient. Some of these scorch marks are still worn to the touch, and that ice, it's not melting. The temperature difference is extreme. Robin moved towards the damaged section, her expression grim. This level of focused destruction, to affect this kind of super advanced material to such a degree, requires power beyond almost anything I've witnessed. She ran a gloved hand over a patch of the unnaturally cold ice. This isn't normal ice. It radiates a chilling energy that feels absolute. She then examined a melted metal strut. In this heat, it's like the core of a volcano was unleashed here. Zoro's hand instinctively went to his swords. A battle. A serious one. Recently. He looked around, but there are no bodies. Sanji's gaze was drawn to the clear line dividing the heat and ice damage. It's like two gods had a brawl. And this place got caught in the middle. He then noticed something else. Hey, look. This tree thingy. Some of its light cables on the damaged side are dark, severed. Indeed, the colossal, tree-like structure at the chamber's heart, while still overwhelmingly impressive, bore scars. On the side facing the devastation, many of its light-pulsing cables were snapped or blackened, and a few of the smaller crystalline spheres hanging in its upper branches were cracked or dark. Yet, the structure itself was still largely intact, still humming with immense, contained power, as if it had weathered the cataclysm. Hancock's expression was thoughtful. This destruction feels familiar, the intensity of it. When Akainu-san and Kuzan-san fought for the position of fleet admiral, their battle was said to have permanently altered the climate of an entire island. So we're here, Punk hazard. She looked around the chamber. Could this be related? Perhaps this facility, this World Gate, as Robin Schwann called it, was located there, or connected to it somehow, and their duel inadvertently impacted it, or perhaps even reawakened parts of it? Luffy, who had been listening intently, his usual boisterousness subdued by the atmosphere of the chamber, looked at the tree-like structure. So, a big fight made this place wake up more? Like the zappy ball outside? He walked towards the base of the metallic tree, its pulsating blue light illuminating his Nika form, which he hadn't dismissed. As he approached, a section of the tree's trunk at about his eye level began to glow brighter. The alien symbols, similar to those on the portal and the sphere, flowed across its surface before coalescing into a single, complex sigil that pulsed gently. It wasn't as overwhelming as the sphere's direct gaze, but it felt like an invitation, a point of interface. It seems this central structure is the true control system, Robin mused, joining Luffy. The sphere we encountered first might have been a primary power source or a gateway guardian. This feels like the Nexus. She looked up at the towering structure. The sheer amount of information, the energy being regulated here, it's astounding. Vegapunk himself would be lost in awe. She then caught herself, a flicker of surprise in her own eyes at the name that had slipped out. A name often associated with the pinnacle of scientific understanding, and also with a past that brushed against the world government's deepest secrets. Luffy reached out and placed his flaming, white-gloved hand on the glowing sigil. The moment he touched it, the entire tree-like structure pulsed with a brilliant white light that momentarily outshone its usual blue. The severed cables on its damaged side sparked, and a few of the darkened crystalline spheres in its upper branches flickered, attempting to reignite. Luffy's eyes widened, and a torrent of images, sensations, and fragmented information seemed to flood his mind, not in a painful way, but like a vast, ancient library opening its doors. He saw star charts of galaxies he didn't recognize, schematics of incomprehensible machines, glimpses of landscapes from other worlds, and faint, echoing voices speaking in a language he didn't know but somehow, on a primal level, felt. He sensed the sheer age of the place, eons of silent waiting. He also felt a deep, resonant echo of the cataclysmic battle that had scarred the chamber, the searing heat, the absolute zero, the raw, unrestrained fury of logia powers clashing at their peak. He gasped, pulling his hand back. The white light receded, and the tree returned to its steady blue pulse, though now, a few more of the previously dark cables glowed faintly, and one of the cracked spheres high above emitted a weak, but steady, new light. Luffy, what happened? What did you see? Nami asked urgently, rushing to his side. Luffy shook his head, his eyes still wide and distant for a moment. Then he focused on his crew, a grin slowly spreading across his face, but this grin was different. It held not just excitement, but a dawning understanding of something immense. Shi, this place, it's a giant map, he declared. A map to everywhere, and it was broken, but now it's getting a little bit fixed. That big fight between Aokiji and Akainu, it shook things up enough to let the zappy ball outside call for help, and we helped. He turned back to the glowing sigil on the tree. And this tree, it knows things. It knows how to go places, really far away places. His gaze then drifted to the thousands of stasis alcoves lining the walls, most still intact and glowing softly. And all those are like souvenirs from all the places this tree can go. The implications of his words began to sink in for the rest of the crew. A map to everywhere? Ancient technology capable of interstellar or interdimensional travel? And artifacts from those journeys, preserved for millennia? The scope of their discovery was staggering, far beyond any treasure they could have imagined. The new world had just become infinitely larger. Robin's mind, already racing, seized upon Luffy's words. A map to everywhere. Luffy, when you touched it, did you see locations? Did it show you how it works? Her voice was laced with an academic fervor that bordered on reverence. This was beyond poneglyphs, beyond even the legends of the ancient kingdom. This was something that could rewrite their understanding of the entire world, perhaps even the cosmos. Luffy scratched his head, his Nika mming as he concentrated. It was, a lot. Like a giant, super fast whoosh of pictures and feelings. I saw stars, weird planets, and paths, like glowing roads between them. And this tree, it's like the main station. The zappy ball outside is one of its power thingies. The fight between Smoky Guy's old boss and Ice Guy made some of the connections here wake up just enough to send out a lonely signal. And my Nika power, it kinda fits like a key. He grinned, it likes my vibrations. Nami, ever the navigator, was practically vibrating herself. Paths between stars? Luffy, are you saying this thing can travel to other worlds? The concept was so immense it was almost terrifying. Yet the allure of charting such unknown territories sent a shiver of excitement down her spine. If we could understand its navigation, the maps we could create. Sanji, however, was looking at the stasis alcoves with a different kind of interest. Souvenirs? Huh? Wonder if any of those other worlds have unique culinary ingredients. Interstellar cuisine. It has a nice ring to it. He then noticed Zoro eyeing one of the alcoves that seemed to contain a long, slender object shrouded in a particularly bright stasis field. Oi, Marimo, don't even think about trying to loot ancient alien weapons until we know what they do. You'll probably just cut yourself. Zoro grunted, not taking his eyes off the object. If it's a sword, it's a souvenir worth having. Hancock, meanwhile, was focused on the implications for Luffy. This map, this station, it clearly responds to you, Luffy-sama. It recognizes your power, your destiny. Perhaps this is another facet of what it means to be Joy Boy, or Nika. To be a connector of worlds, a liberator not just of people, but of paths. As they discussed this, the glowing sigil on the tree-like structure pulsed again. This time, one of the larger, crystalline spheres suspended high amongst its branches began to glow with a focused, intense white light. A beam of this light shot downwards, striking the polished floor about 30 meters away from them. Where the beam hit, the floor became translucent, and an image began to form within it. A swirling, three-dimensional star chart, breathtaking in its complexity. Thousands of points of light representing stars and galaxies shifted and moved, interconnected by faint, pulsating lines of energy. One of these lines, originating from a point that presumably represented their current location, began to glow brighter, tracing a path towards a nearby, vibrant blue star system depicted in the projection. As the path illuminated, one of the stasis alcoves on the far wall, previously dormant, lit up with a soft, inviting hum, its stasis field flickering slightly. It's showing us a destination, Robin breathed, stepping closer to the projected star chart. And highlighting an artifact from that system, perhaps? Luffy's eyes were glued to the glowing path and the now active alcove. Ooh, a new place. And it has a special souvenir waiting. Let's go see. He started towards the highlighted alcove. Hold on, Luffy. Nami grabbed his arm. We can't just randomly decide to travel to another star system. We have no idea what's there. What about the Thousand Sunny? What about our journey to Raftel? What about, breathing in space? Luffy blinked. Oh yeah, breathing is good. He tapped his chin. Maybe this tree thingy can make a bubble for the Sunny? Like the one Kuma made? Before they could debate the logistics of interstellar travel, the sigil on the tree pulsed once more. The projected star chart shifted. The glowing path to the blue star system faded, and instead, a different, much shorter path illuminated. One that led not to a distant star, but to another point on the same projected map that represented their current world. This new path terminated at a location that looked vaguely familiar from Nami's Grand Line charts, though depicted with far greater detail and from an orbital perspective. As this terrestrial path lit up, a different stasis alcove, much closer to them, hummed to life. Simultaneously, another section of the cavern wall, adjacent to the first portal they had entered through, began to glow and ripple. A second portal, identical in appearance to the first, formed. It seems our ancient host is offering us options, Robin observed, a smile playing on her lips. A journey to the stars, or perhaps a demonstration of its capabilities on a more local scale first. And it appears to be providing the means of transit. She gestured to the new portal. Luffy looked from the new portal to the highlighted terrestrial path on the star chart, then to the newly activated alcove. So, we can go to that place on our world first? Like a test drive? His excitement was still palpable. And there's a souvenir from the Ritu? The highlighted alcove near them pulsed invitingly. Its stasis field dissolved with a soft hiss, revealing the object within. A small, intricately carved wooden box, clearly ancient, yet perfectly preserved. It emanated a faint, warm aura. Well, Nami said, letting out a breath. A test drive to another part of our world sounds slightly less terrifying than instant interstellar travel. Slightly. She looked at the projected location. That point, it's in the new world, but it's an uncharted region according to all known maps. An island that supposedly doesn't exist, or is impossible to reach by normal means. An island that doesn't exist? Zoro's interest was piqued. Sounds like our kind of place. Luffy was already at the alcove, carefully picking up the ancient wooden box. It was surprisingly light. Wonder what's inside. He started to fiddle with a clasp. Perhaps it's a clue, or a tool relevant to the location it's guiding us towards, Robin suggested, peering at the box. The craftsmanship is exquisite, definitely pre-Void Century. Sanji eyed the new portal. So, we step through that, and we end up on some mystery island in our own backyard, so to speak, beats sailing through another New World storm. Hancock nodded. A prudent first step. It allows us to understand the functionality of these portals without venturing into the complete unknown of another galaxy. She looked at Luffy, who was now shaking the box next to his ear. Luffy-sama, perhaps it would be wise to investigate the contents of the box before proceeding. Luffy stopped shaking it. Good idea. He examined the clasp more closely. It wasn't locked, just intricately designed. With a click, it opened. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded, silken material, was not gold or jewels, but a single, perfectly preserved, petrified seed of a type none of them had ever seen before, and a small, rolled-up piece of what looked like extremely thin, almost translucent vellum. The seed pulsed with a faint, internal green light. Luffy picked up the vellum. It unrolled easily, revealing more of the strange, flowing alien symbols, but beneath them, almost like a palimpsest, was a single, faded line written in the common tongue, in an archaic script. Where the sky weeps iron and the earth bleeds fire, the first garden sleeps, awaiting the sun's return. Luffy examined the petrified seed, its faint green glow pulsing softly in his Nika-flamed palm. It felt warm, strangely alive despite its stone-like exterior. He then looked at the vellum message again. Sky weeps iron, earth bleeds fire, first garden sleeps, sun's return. Shishishi. Sounds like a riddle. I like riddles. Usually Sanji's better at them though. Sanji, who had been looking over Luffy's shoulder, puffed on his cigarette. Sky weeps iron. Could mean metallic rain, or a place with a lot of industrial decay. Earth bleeds fire. Volcanic activity, or perhaps even widespread conflict. First garden. Sounds like it should be a paradise, but the description makes it sound like a wasteland. Or a paradise that has endured such conditions, Robin mused, her eyes gleaming with interest. A sanctuary hidden within, or protected by, a harsh exterior. The nearly points to you, Luffy-san, and your Nika abilities. This seed might be the key to awakening or restoring this garden. Nami looked at the new portal, then back at the main tree-like structure. So, this portal will take us to the island described in the riddle? And we're supposed to use this seed there? She tapped her chin. Okay, it's still crazy, but at least it's a world crazy. We need to be prepared for anything. That description doesn't sound friendly. Zoro was already heading towards the new portal. Less talking, more walking. If it's dangerous, all the better. Wait up, you moss head, Sanji called, following. Someone needs to make sure you don't get lost on the way to the portal, even if it is just 20 feet away. Hancock nodded. This first garden sounds like a place of significance, tied to Luffy-sama's destiny. It is only right that we investigate. Luffy carefully placed the petrified seed and the vellum scroll into the small pouch at his waist where he usually kept his meat. Alright, to the first garden. Let's go wake it up. He bounded towards the newly formed portal, his Nika flames casting dancing shadows. One by one, the Straw Hats stepped through. The sensation was the same as before, a brief, disorienting flash of multicolored light and weightlessness. And then they were standing on solid ground under an open, albeit bizarre, sky. They had arrived on an island that perfectly matched the riddle's grim description. The sky above was a perpetual twilight, choked with thick, rust-colored clouds from which a fine, metallic dust, the iron tears, constantly fell, coating everything in a reddish-brown film. The air was acrid, smelling of sulfur and burnt metal. In the distance, several volcanoes belched plumes of black smoke and molten rock. The earth bleeding fire, painting the horizon with angry reds and oranges. The ground beneath their feet was cracked, barren rock, interspersed with patches of twisted, metallic wreckage that looked like the remains of ancient, forgotten battles or industrial collapse. There was no visible vegetation, save for a few hardy, blackened stumps that looked petrified. Well, Nami said, pulling her collar tighter and already feeling the grit of the metallic dust on her skin, it's certainly atmospheric. And horrible. This place feels dead. I don't want to be on an island that's literally rusting and on fire. Disease is kicking in hard, Sanji muttered, though he was already scanning for any potential threats, or, less likely, edible flora. Luffy, however, was taking it all in with wide eyes, his Nika form still active, the white flames providing a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom. Shishishi. It's gloomy, but it feels strong, like something super old is sleeping here. He took a deep breath of the acrid air, seemingly unfazed. His connection to the Shinigami fruit often gave him a different perspective on places that felt dead, or connected to the end of things. Sometimes, he could sense lingering echoes or dormant life where others couldn't. Robin knelt, examining the metallic dust. The iron content is remarkably high. And this wreckage, it's not from any shipbuilding tradition I recognize. The alloys are strange, incredibly resilient despite the obvious damage. Zoro drew Wado Ichimonji slightly, his senses on alert. This place is quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm before a storm, or after everything's already been killed. Hancock's regal bearing was slightly marred by a frown as she surveyed the desolation. If there is a garden here, it is well hidden indeed. This land feels cursed. Luffy pulled out the petrified seed. It still pulsed with its gentle green light, a small beacon of potential life in the desolate landscape. "Alright, Mr. Seed. Where's this garden hiding?" He looked around, then held the seed up. As he did, the seed's green glow intensified significantly. A thin, almost invisible tendril of green light, finer than a spider's silk, extended from the seed, pointing directly towards one of the larger, more active volcanoes in the distance. One that seemed to be the source of much of the bleeding fire. "Whoa, it's a compass seed," Luffy exclaimed. "It's pointing that way." Nami squinted at the volcano. "Towards the most dangerous-looking part of this charming hellscape? Of course it is." "Well, a sleeping garden isn't likely to be found out in the open, Nami Swan," Sanji remarked. "It'd need protection. What better protection than a volcano?" The riddle mentioned the earth, bleeding fire, Robin recalled. Perhaps the entrance to the garden is within, or beneath, the volcano itself. A place of destruction guarding a place of creation. "Then let's go," Luffy declared, already starting to run towards the volcano, the seed held out in front of him like a dowsing rod. His Nika flames trailed behind him, momentarily pushing back the oppressive gloom. The journey towards the volcano was treacherous. The ground was unstable, littered with sharp metallic debris and sudden fissures that vented scalding steam. The metallic rain grew heavier at times, forcing them to shield their eyes. They encountered no living creatures, only the ghosts of a forgotten, violent past in the form of more ancient wreckage. Luffy's advanced observation haki, sharpened by Rayleigh's training and further enhanced by his unique devil fruit synergy, helped them navigate many of the immediate perils. He'd call out warnings: hole, wobbly rock, hot steam coming, often with a cheerful lack of actual concern for himself, but it kept the others on their toes. His Shinigami-enhanced senses also picked up on subtle shifts in the dead atmosphere, a faint whisper of energy that seemed to draw them towards the volcano, separate from the seed's guidance. As they neared the base of the target volcano, the ground grew hotter and the air thicker with sulfurous fumes. Rivers of molten rock flowed down its flanks, creating a formidable, fiery moat. "Okay, how do we get into that?" Nami asked, eyeing the flowing lava. Even Luffy isn't fireproof against that much direct heat, Nika form or not. Luffy was looking at the volcano, the seed in his hand pulsing rapidly now. The thin green light from it wasn't just pointing, it was almost tugging. "It wants to go right through there." He pointed towards a section of the volcano's slope where a particularly large river of lava was flowing, seemingly into a dark cave or fissure near its base. "Through the lava?" Usopp's voice, if he were there, would have cracked. Sanji and Nami looked equally incredulous. "That's insane, Luffy," Sanji said. "We'll be incinerated." Luffy just grinned. His Nika flames flared, and he bounced on the balls of his feet. Shi. "Not if we're quick. Or if I make a path." He looked at the lava flow, then at his hands. His connection to the Shinigami fruit sometimes gave him an odd intuition about endings and passages. While Nika was about liberation and imagination, Shinigami was about transitions and the veil between states. He took a deep breath, and for a moment, the white Nika flames around him seemed to flicker, and a cooler, almost ethereal blue-silver light, characteristic of his Shinigami fruit's manifestations when he consciously drew on it, subtly overlaid them. It wasn't a full transformation, more like an infusion. His eyes, usually ringed with Nika's gold, held a deeper, more ancient silver glint within the gold. "Hold on," Luffy said, his voice taking on a slightly deeper, more resonant tone. He stepped towards the river of lava, path. He extended his hands. The air before him shimmered. The intense heat radiating from the lava seemed to part. It didn't solidify the lava in a conventional Aokiji-like way, nor did he repel it with haki alone. Instead, the lava itself seemed to reluctantly, unnaturally, divide. A narrow, temporary tunnel, just wide enough for them to pass, began to form within the molten river, the incandescent rock flowing around an unseen barrier. It was a brief, intensely focused reality. A fusion of Nika's imaginative power, "I want a path here," and a subtle touch of the Shinigami's dominion over impassable thresholds. The effort was clearly immense, as beads of sweat appeared on his brow despite his Nika form. "Whoa!" Nami breathed. He He just told the lava to move, Sanji said, stunned. Zoro's eyes widened slightly. That's new. Hancock watched with rapt attention, a look of awe on her face. His power continues to evolve in astounding ways. Robin simply observed, an unreadable expression on her face, but her mind was cataloging this new facet of Luffy's abilities with keen interest. Quick, before it closes, Luffy urged, straining. The seed says the garden is through here. Without hesitation, the Straw Hats dashed into the surreal, temporary tunnel of parting lava. Luffy bringing up the rear, the molten rock already beginning to flow back together behind them. The tunnel through the lava was short, but intensely hot and disorienting. The molten rock walls on either side pulsed with an angry, incandescent light, and the air was thick with the smell of brimstone. Luffy, gritting his teeth, maintained the unnatural parting with a visible effort, his Nika flames, still tinged with that ethereal Shinigami silver, burning fiercely to ward off the oppressive heat. Just as the lava behind them began to seal the entrance with a hungry sizzle, they burst out of the fiery passage and into a surprisingly large, dark cavern within the volcano's base. The moment they were clear, Luffy let out a huge gasp, his concentration breaking. The lava behind them slammed shut with a roar, sealing them in. He stumbled slightly, the silver sheen fading from his flames, leaving him panting but grinning. She. That was tingly, he gasped, wiping sweat from his brow, harder than punching. Luffy, that was incredible, Nami exclaimed, looking back at the now solid wall of cooling rock where the lava tunnel had been. How did you even do that? Luffy shrugged, still catching his breath. Dunno, just kinda. Asked it nicely, and my other power helped make the asking stick. He patted his chest. Felt like opening a really stuck door. The cavern they were in was vast and roughly circular. Unlike the desolate exterior of the island, the air here was warm, humid, and, most surprisingly, breathable and fresh, carrying the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. The only light came from the petrified seed in Luffy's hand, which now glowed with a brilliant, vibrant green, its guiding tendril pointing towards the center of the cavern. This air, Sanji said, taking a deep breath, it's clean, and I smell life. Robin was already examining the cavern walls. They weren't natural rock, but rather composed of the same dark, ancient metal as the station they had just left, though here it was smoother, almost organic in its curves, and covered in intricate, dormant patterns. This entire chamber is artificial. Another construct of that ancient civilization. As their eyes adjusted, they could see that the center of the cavern, where the seed's light pointed, was not empty. There, bathed in the seed's glow, was a raised dais of the same dark metal, and upon it, lay a single, colossal, petrified flower bud, easily 3 meters tall, its stone petals tightly closed. It was clearly of the same kind as the seed Luffy held, but unimaginably larger, and it radiated an ancient, dormant power. Around the dais, the floor was etched with the same flowing, alien symbols they had seen before, forming a complex, circular pattern. The first garden, Hancock breathed, her voice filled with wonder. Or what remains of it. A single, sleeping bloom. Zoro walked around the dais, his hand on his swords. It's just a rock flower? After all that? He sounded almost disappointed. Luffy, however, approached the giant petrified bud, his eyes wide with a childlike awe. The seed in his hand pulsed in perfect synchrony with a faint, almost imperceptible green throb emanating from deep within the stone flower. It's not just a rock, he said softly. It's sleeping. Like the tree station was. It's waiting. He looked at the seed in his hand, then at the giant bud. The riddle said, awaiting the sun's return. He held the small, glowing seed out towards the colossal stone flower. As the small seed drew close to the petrified bud, a profound resonance occurred. Both the seed and the giant flower began to glow with an intense, almost blinding green light. The alien symbols etched into the floor around the dais lit up, one by one, forming a complete, luminous circuit. The air in the cavern thrummed with power, a life-giving energy that was the complete antithesis of the island's desolate exterior. The small petrified seed in Luffy's hand suddenly crumbled into glowing green dust, which flowed like a miniature river of light towards the giant stone bud. As the dust made contact, the surface of the colossal flower began to crack. The sound was like ancient trees splitting, or mountains groaning to life. The stone exterior began to flake away, revealing not dead rock, but vibrant, living tissue beneath, petals the color of jade, emerald, and spring moss, all tightly furled. It's alive, Nami gasped, clutching Sanji's arm. The giant bud began to unfurl, slowly, majestically, its petals opening to the artificial cavern's gloom. With each degree it opened, the life-giving energy in the cavern intensified. The dormant patterns on the metallic walls of the chamber began to glow faintly with green light, mirroring the symbols on the floor. From the heart of the blooming colossal flower, a gentle, warm light emerged, growing brighter as the petals unfurled. And with the light came a sound, a soft, ethereal chorus, like thousands of harmonious voices, or the rustling of a million leaves in a gentle breeze. It wasn't a song of words, but of pure emotion, relief, joy, and an ancient, patient gratitude. Luffy, bathed in the flower's light, his Nika flames harmonizing with its green glow, felt a profound connection. It was similar to the feeling he'd had when touching the tree station, but this was warmer, more organic, imbued with an overwhelming sense of life rather than pure information. He felt the ancient weariness of this place, the long eons of waiting in the dark, shielded by the island's harsh exterior, and the sudden, joyful awakening. His Shinigami-enhanced senses also picked up something else. A vast network of what felt like dormant life force spread throughout the island, far beneath the surface, all connected to this central flower, as if it were the heart of a slumbering ecosystem. Finally, the colossal flower was fully open. Its petals formed a perfect, multi-layered bloom, easily 10 meters across. And in its center, where the pistil and stamen should be, there was not pollen, but a swirling vortex of pure, golden-green life energy. Floating serenely within this vortex, her eyes closed as if in a deep meditative trance, was a figure. She was humanoid, slender and graceful, her skin the color of polished mahogany. Long, flowing hair, the vibrant green of new spring leaves, cascaded around her. She wore simple, elegant robes woven from what looked like living flowers and vines. Markings like the alien symbols on the walls adorned her skin, glowing faintly. As the flower fully opened, her eyes fluttered open too. They were a startling, luminous gold, almost identical in hue to the rings in Luffy's Nika eyes, and they radiated an ancient wisdom and a profound, gentle serenity. She looked directly at Luffy, a soft, knowing smile gracing her lips. The ethereal chorus seemed to swell around her. The sun has returned, her voice echoed, not through sound waves, but seemingly directly into their minds. A voice that was both ancient and ageless, filled with a warmth that dispelled any remaining chill from the desolate island. The first garden awakens, and I am Lyra, an echo of its first bloom, keeper of its slumbering heart. Welcome, child of Nika. We have waited long. Mental voice of Lyra resonated within their minds, carrying an aura of profound peace and ancient knowledge that was both awe-inspiring and strangely comforting. Even Zoro, usually wary of anything overtly mystical, found his hand relaxing slightly on his swords. Luffy, his Nika flames still burning brightly, just grinned, his earlier fatigue forgotten. She, you were sleeping in a giant flower? That's a super cool bed. I'm Luffy. Nice to meet ya, Lyra. His greeting was, as always, disarmingly straightforward. Lyra's smile widened. Indeed, Monkey D. Luffy. Your light, your laughter. They are as the legends foretold. The resonance of Nika is strong within you, a song of freedom that this place has yearned to hear for millennia. Her golden eyes, so similar to Luffy's Nika rings, seemed to see not just him, but the essence of his devil fruit, the will of the ancient god it embodied. Nami, recovering from the initial shock, whispered, "She knows who you are. Nika. This is all connected, isn't it? The ancient civilization, Joy Boy, your fruit." Robin stepped forward slowly, her gaze fixed on Lyra with an expression of profound academic reverence. "Lyra-san," she began, her voice filled with respect, "this first garden, this place. It is a remnant of the civilization that built the World Gate system, is it not? The symbols, the technology, they are the same." Lyra inclined her head, her leafy green hair swaying gently, though there was no breeze in the cavern. "It is so. We are the Kavoth, the Starweavers, the Gardeners of Worlds." Or rather, I am an echo of what we were. This sanctuary, Solara's cradle, was one of many such first gardens we seeded across the cosmos, repositories of life, knowledge, and the star paths. This particular cradle was established in an age when your world was young, long before your recorded histories began, even before the shadows of what you call the Void Century fell. Kavoth. Star Weavers. Sanji murmured, trying to commit the names to memory. So you guys are aliens? Lyra's mental laughter was like the chiming of soft bells. A term of perspective, is it not? To us, you would be the aliens if we met on our original homeworld. But yes, we came from a star system far from this one. Our purpose was not conquest, but to nurture, to connect, to share the gift of life and understanding. Her gaze softened. But like all great ages, ours too saw its twilight. An ancient calamity, a silencing, swept through the network. The star paths fractured, the gardens went dormant, awaiting a time when the energies of liberation and joyful creation, the very essence of Nika, would be strong enough in the universe to reawaken them. Her golden eyes turned back to Luffy. The clash of immense powers on this island, the battle that scarred your punk hazard, created a surge, a wound in the world's fabric. That surge, combined with the nascent stirring of Nika within you as you journeyed closer, was enough to send a faint distress signal through the damaged systems of the World Gate station you discovered. It was a desperate call, amplified by the sphere, which is a primary energy regulator and a guardian. Luffy tilted his head. So, Akainu and Aokiji's big fight helped wake you up? That's kinda funny. In a way, yes, Lyra affirmed. Destruction inadvertently paved the way for potential rebirth. The sphere then guided you, sensing your unique resonance, your compatibility. And you, child of Nika, brought the key. She gestured with a graceful hand towards where the small seed had dissolved. That was the heart seed of this cradle, containing its dormant essence, awaiting the touch of the sun to bloom anew. So this big flower is like the main computer for the garden? Nami asked, looking up at the colossal bloom. It is its heart, its soul, its connection to the life force of this world and to the network of other cradles, Lyra explained. And I am its caretaker, an imprint of the last Kavoth who tended it before the silencing. My consciousness is tied to its well-being. Zoro, ever practical, finally spoke. So, this garden is awake now. What does that mean? For us? For this island? Lyra's luminous eyes swept over them all. It means life will begin to return to this blighted surface, slowly at first, as the cradle's energy spread. The iron tears will lessen, the bleeding fire will eventually be soothed. This island will heal. For you. Your arrival, your act of reawakening, has forged a bond. This cradle, and through it, the remnants of the Kavoth network, now recognize you, Luffy-sama, as a friend, an ally of life. She then focused on Luffy again. The energy you absorbed from the sphere at the World Gate station, and the awakening of this cradle. These acts have attuned you further to the ancient currents. Your Nika abilities. They will find new depths, new expressions. The freedom you embody is not just of the body or spirit, but of creation itself. Imagine, and it can be. Luffy's Nika flame seemed to pulse in response to her words, and he felt a subtle but definite shift within him. A deeper understanding of the boundless potential he held. It wasn't a sudden new attack, but more like a lock clicking open in his mind, revealing a vaster playground for his powers. His Shinigami aspect, too, felt a strange resonance with Lyra's ancient, serene life force, a connection between the cycle of endings and new beginnings. Robin then asked, Lyra-san, the silencing you mentioned, what was it? What could fracture a civilization capable of such incredible feats? A shadow seemed to pass over Lyra's luminous features. Her mental voice grew somber, a force antithetical to our own. A power that consumes light, that thrives on control, on enforced uniformity, on the extinguishing of individuality and joy. It whispered promises of order, but brought only sterile silence. It spread through the star paths like a plague, turning worlds cold and voices mute. We fought, but it was insidious, patient. The network was shattered to prevent its complete corruption. Her gaze became distant, filled with an ancient sorrow. We believe it still lingers, out there, in the void between stars, perhaps even touching worlds unknowingly. The description sent a chill down the spines of the Straw Hats. It sounded disturbingly familiar to the oppressive nature of the world government at its worst, its obsession with control and the erasure of history. Before they could delve deeper into that ominous topic, Lyra's expression softened again. But today is not for such shadows. Today is for rebirth. Because of you, this cradle breathes again. She raised a hand, and from the center of the giant flower, a single, glowing fruit, about the size of Luffy's head, pulsed with golden-green light. It detached itself and floated gently towards Luffy. It looked succulent, almost ethereal, and emanated an incredible aura of pure life energy. "This is a sun petal fruit," Lyra's voice explained. "A gift from the awakened heart of Solara's cradle. It is not a devil fruit, but something far older. It will not grant new powers in the way you understand them, but it will vitalize, restore, and strengthen the inherent life force of whoever consumes it, attuning them further to the natural energies of the world, and to the song of Nika." Her eyes twinkled at Luffy. "Consider it a thank you, and a provision for the journeys ahead." Luffy's eyes lit up like stars. "Food. A super special glowing fruit. Shi, thanks, flower lady." He caught the sun petal fruit, which felt surprisingly light and warm in his hands. His instincts, both as a Nika user and just as Luffy, told him this was something incredibly good. Without a second thought, he opened his mouth wide and took a massive bite. The taste of the sun petal fruit was unlike anything Luffy had ever experienced. It wasn't just sweet or savory, it was like tasting pure life itself. A burst of sunshine, fresh rain, blooming flowers, and the deep, comforting strength of ancient trees, all at once. A warm, invigorating energy spread through his entire being, from the tips of his Nika-flamed hair to the soles of his sandals. He didn't suddenly gain a new gear or a flashy attack. Instead, it felt like every cell in his body was being gently supercharged, his existing vitality amplified. His Nika flames burned with a cleaner, more vibrant intensity, and the subtle silver undertones of his Shinigami power seemed to harmonize more perfectly with the white fire, creating an almost opalescent sheen. He felt lighter, stronger, and strangely clearer. The fragmented images and sensations he'd received from the World Gate station seemed to settle, becoming less chaotic and more accessible in his mind. Even his natural healing factor felt like it had received a significant boost. "Hooah!" Luffy exclaimed, his eyes sparkling, juice dripping down his chin. "That's the best fruit ever. I feel all bouncy and super strong." Even more than usual, he took another enormous bite. The other Straw Hats watched in amazement. Even without tasting it, they could feel the potent, life-affirming aura radiating from the fruit and, by extension, from Luffy as he consumed it. Nami noticed that small cuts and bruises Luffy had sustained earlier from deflected debris seemed to vanish before her eyes. "He's healing even faster." Sanji whistled. "That thing's gotta be packed with every vitamin in existence, and then some from another dimension." Zoro grunted, a hint of curiosity in his expression. "HMPH. Bet it doesn't taste as good as onigiri and booze." Robin observed with keen interest. "It's not just physical restoration. Lyra-san said it attunes one to natural energies and the Song of Nika. It's likely enhancing Luffy-san's intrinsic connection to his devil fruit, perhaps allowing for more intuitive control or a deeper well of stamina for his abilities." Lyra smiled warmly as Luffy finished the last of the sun petal fruit with a satisfied sigh. "The cradle's gift is accepted, and it has found a worthy recipient. Your life force, child of Nika, now sings even more brightly. This will aid you in the challenges to come, and help you bear the burdens that destiny will place upon you." Her golden eyes then swept over the other Straw Hats. "This cradle has little more to offer in terms of material wealth, for our treasures were of life and knowledge. However, your act of reawakening it has created a bond. Should you ever find yourselves in dire need, and if the star paths allow, Solara's cradle may offer sanctuary or guidance, if you can find your way back through the World Gate station." She then gestured towards the entrance of the cavern, where the lava tunnel had been. The solid rock wall rippled, and then dissolved, revealing not the fiery passage, but a calm, cool tunnel leading directly back towards the surface of the island, bypassing the volcano's main dangers. A safer path for your departure. The energies of the cradle have already begun to soothe the immediate volcanic activity. Whoa, a shortcut out. Luffy cheered. You think of everything, flower lady. Our time together for now is brief, Lyra's mental voice continued, a touch of melancholy in its tone. I must now focus the cradle's energies on the healing of this world. The process will be long. But know that a beacon of life now burns anew where there was once only desolation. Nami stepped forward. Lyra-san, thank you, for everything, this has been incredible. Robin bowed her head. The knowledge that beings like the Kavoth existed, that such wonders are possible, is a treasure beyond measure. We are grateful for your wisdom. Luffy grinned. Yeah, thanks for the awesome fruit and the cool adventure. We'll come visit again sometime. Lyra's smile was serene. The star paths are fickle, child of Nika. But your destiny is bright. Go forth and continue to spread your song of liberation. Perhaps one day, more of the lost gardens will awaken to your light. Her form within the heart of the colossal flower began to glow brighter, her image becoming slightly more translucent. I will remain here, an echo bound to the cradle's heart. Farewell, Straw Hat Pirates. May your journey be filled with laughter. With a final, brilliant pulse of golden green light from the colossal flower, Lyra's image faded completely, though the flower itself continued to radiate its life-giving warmth and energy. The ethereal chorus softened, becoming a gentle, ambient hum, the heart of Solara's cradle now beating steadily on its own. As the Straw Hats stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the experience, the colossal, awakened bloom pulsed once more, with a deep, resonant hum. This time, no physical object detached. Instead, a concentrated beam of pure, golden-green life energy, interwoven with intricate, flowing patterns of the Kavoth's symbolic blue light, lanced out from the very center of the flower. It moved with incredible speed, not towards Luffy's hands, but directly towards his chest, where his own Nika flamed heart beat. Luffy! Nami cried out, a wave of alarm washing over her. Zoro and Sanji tensed, ready to intervene, but the beam was too fast, and something about its nature felt less like an attack and more like a deliberate merging. The beam of Kavoth life energy struck Luffy. There was no impact, no pain. Instead, it flowed into him, a warm, vibrant current that spread through his Nika-infused form. Where the beam touched his skin, right over his heart, an intricate marking began to form, glowing with a soft, internal light, a fusion of emerald green and Kavoth blue. It was a beautiful, complex symbol, reminiscent of a blooming flower intertwined with the flowing, ancient script of the Star Weavers, subtly echoing the patterns on the World Gate station and the first garden itself. It looked almost like a living tattoo, pulsing gently in time with his own heartbeat and the distant thrum of the cradle. Luffy blinked, looking down at the new, glowing mark on his chest. It felt warm, like a second heart, and he could sense a profound, unbreakable connection forming between himself and the awakened garden around them, a bond that felt incredibly ancient and deeply personal. From the fading resonance of the great flower, Lyra's mental voice echoed one last time, softer now, like a gentle breeze, tinged with a serene finality. A living bond, child of Nika, a part of Solara's cradle woven into your own spirit. This mark is its heart song, forever resonating with your own light. Through it, you shall always be connected to this garden, no matter how far you roam. It shall serve as your beacon, a reminder of the life that endures, and perhaps, in time, you will learn how its roots can draw sustenance from the very wellspring of life it represents. Should the need and the understanding become clear. The voice faded completely, leaving only the gentle hum of the awakened garden and the soft glow of the new mark on Luffy's chest. Luffy touched the symbol. It felt like a natural part of him already. His Nika flames seemed to dance around it, and for a moment, the golden rings in his eyes pulsed with the same green-blue light as the mark. Whoa! He breathed. It's like the flower gave me a super cool, glowing freckle, and it feels warm and tingly. Nami approached cautiously. Luffy, are you okay? What is that? It's amazing, Robin said, her eyes wide with scholarly awe as she examined the intricate, glowing symbol. This is no mere tattoo. It's a symbiotic mark, a living conduit. The Kavoth's understanding of bioenergetic integration is beyond anything I could have imagined. Sanji whistled. So, the flower lady basically made you part plant, Luffy? Hope you don't start photosynthesizing instead of eating my food? Zoro grunted, though his eye was fixed on the mark with undeniable curiosity. Another weird power-up. As long as it doesn't make you sprout leaves where your swords should be. Hancock gazed at the mark with reverence. A sacred bond, linking Luffy-sama to the very life force of an ancient, benevolent power. It owes his divine nature. Luffy just grinned, poking the glowing mark. Shishishi. It feels good, like I've got an extra battery, but a really pretty one. He still held the vellum scroll with the riddle. That, at least, was a tangible clue. The mystery of deriving energy from this bond, as Lyra hinted, was something he'd likely discover through instinct or in a moment of dire need, as was often his way. We should go, Nami urged again, though her mind was now buzzing with this new development. A living connection to this place, imprinted on Luffy himself? The implications were vast. Frankie, Usopp, and Chopper need to know we're okay, and we still have a mountain of problems on Punk Hazard. Indeed, Robin agreed. And this mark? It will be fascinating to observe how it interacts with Luffy-san's abilities and the energies of the outside world. With a last look at the magnificent, life-giving flower that now shared a direct, living link with their captain, the Straw Hats turned and headed towards the new exit Lyra had created. The tunnel was cool and damp, and as they walked, Luffy could feel a faint, pleasant thrumming from the mark on his chest, a silent conversation with the distant, healing garden. They emerged from the tunnel onto the island's surface. The subtle improvements were still evident, the air a fraction cleaner, the metallic rain lighter. Luffy glanced down at his chest. Even through his shirt, he could feel the warmth of the mark, and he imagined he could almost see its faint glow. Nami sighed, the wonder of the first garden warring with a more pressing anxiety. Punk Hazard. That call. It still gives me the creeps. We need to get back to the Sunny and figure out what's going on there. Sanji lit a cigarette, his expression thoughtful. Yeah, that crying snail. And one guy doing all the talking. Sounded like he was in deep trouble. Zoro grunted. A samurai causing problems. If he's giving swordsman a bad name, he needs to be dealt with. Hancock looked at Luffy. If there are those in distress, Luffy-sama, your sense of justice will not let it stand. Luffy's adventurous grin softened into a more determined expression. You're right. That crying snail. And the guy asking for his boss. We gotta check it out. He looked towards the exit tunnel. Okay, back to the Sunny. This garden was an awesome side trip, but now it's time to help those guys. Flashback sequence. Occurring on the Thousand Sunny as they entered the New World, before any islands were chosen. The Thousand Sunny was tossed about like a toy in the chaotic waters marking their entry into the New World. On deck, Frankie wrestled with the helm, while Usopp and Chopper, and Brook, if present, were desperately trying to secure anything not nailed down. Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Robin, and Hancock were also on deck, bracing themselves against the ship's violent pitching. I can't get a lock on anything, Nami had shouted, frustration etched on her face as she stared at the wildly spinning needles of her new log pose. This sea is impossible. Suddenly, above the roar of the storm, a distinct sound cut through the air. Geei. It was the unmistakable sound of a Den Den Mushi crying, a sound of extreme distress. A nearby Den Den Mushi, one they weren't using, began to weep profusely, its eyes wide with terror. Usopp pointed at it, his own eyes wide. Hey, that Den Den Mushi. It's crying, what does that mean? Chopper, equally alarmed, consulted one of his medical books frantically, then remembered something. I think that means the person on the other end is in incredible pain or fear. Before anyone could stop him, Luffy, his curiosity and concern instantly piqued, reached over and picked up the receiver. Moshi Moshi? A weak, panicked male voice, gasping for breath, came through the receiver amidst bursts of static. Ha. Boss? Is that you, boss? We picked up your signal, thank goodness. Luffy blinked. Boss? I don't think so. Who's this? It doesn't matter, the voice cried, more desperate now. Just get us out of here. Punk Hazard. We're on Punk Hazard, it's freezing. Some of us are on the burning side. But this cold. And the samurai, he's cutting everyone up. "Ah, he's coming, he's jitst." The line went dead, filled with a harsh, crackling static. The Den Den Mushi on the sunny let out one last mournful wail and then fell silent, though its eyes remained wide with residual terror. A heavy silence fell over the Straw Hats, the crying snails' distress echoing in their minds. Luffy's hand tightened on the receiver. "Punk Hazard," he said, his voice low. "A samurai. Cutting people up who are asking for their boss." Nami had quickly pulled out her charts. "Punk Hazard. That's a government-sealed island. It was destroyed years ago. What's happening there?" Robin's expression was grim. For someone to be invoking a boss in such a situation, and for there to be a samurai attacking them on an island that should be deserted. This is highly irregular and dangerous. It was at that moment, as Nami tried to make sense of the log pose in relation to this new, disturbing information, that its three needles had finally settled. One pointed somewhat erratically in the general direction of where Punk Hazard was rumored to be. Another pointed towards the volcanic island. And the third, vibrating intensely, pointed towards the lightning island. Luffy, torn between the allure of the most exciting path and the urgent, disturbing call, had made his decision. "Okay. We make a super quick stop at that shaky lightning place because it looks like a crazy adventure. Then, no matter what, we go straight to Punk Hazard and find out what's got that snail crying and who this samurai is." End flashback sequence. The group emerged from Lyra's exit tunnel onto the somewhat calmer surface of the lightning island. The memory of the crying Den Den Mushi and the desperate voice was sharp in their minds. "All right, first things first," Nami declared, pulling out her log pose. The needle that had pointed to this island was now relatively stable, but the one that had indicated Punk Hazard was still twitching erratically, though its general direction was clearer now that they were out of the lightning island's immediate magnetic interference. "We need to get back to the Sunny. Frankie, Usopp, and Chopper must be going crazy with worry, especially if they couldn't reach us." Luffy nodded, the Kavoth mark on his chest a warm, steady presence. "Yeah." And then to Punk Hazard. That guy sounded really scared. They made their way back to the small bay where the Thousand Sunny was anchored. As they approached, they could see figures on deck. "Oi, Frankie, Usopp, Chopper. We're back," Luffy bellowed, waving his arms. Relieved shouts answered them. Soon, the landing party was back aboard the Sunny. Frankie, Usopp, and Chopper were ecstatic to see them unharmed, having been unable to raise them on the Den Den Mushi while they were in the Kavoth station in the first garden. Quick explanations were given about the Lightning Island being a super ancient, zappy place with a cool flower lady and a secret garden. Though Luffy, at a subtle glance from Robin, omitted the full details of the World Gate system and the Kavoth for now, simply saying they found something amazing that helped the island feel better, and that he got a cool new mark. The sun petal fruit and its effects were briefly mentioned, and Luffy showed off his glowing freckle to Usopp and Chopper's amazement. Then, the conversation shifted to the more pressing matter. "That Den Den Mushi call," Nami said, her expression serious. "We need to head to Punk Hazard immediately." "About that," Frankie said, "while you guys were gone, we picked up a bit more on that frequency. Just broken bits, but definitely sounds like some kind of emergency. The signal was weak, but it's definitely coming from Punk Hazard." Luffy slammed his fist into his palm. "Okay. It's decided. Weird." He looked around at his crew. "Now, how do we do this? That island sounds like it's half burning, half freezing." Robin spoke up. Considering the nature of the distress call and the unknown dangers, a smaller, stealthier reconnaissance team might be best to assess the situation initially. The island is government sealed. A full crew landing might attract unwanted attention too quickly. "Good idea, Robin," Luffy said. "So, I'll go, and Zoro, you come too. We gotta check out that samurai." Naturally, Zoro grinned. Robin nodded. "I should accompany you. My skills could be useful in uncovering what's truly happening there, and deciphering any clues." Nami then said, "All right. Luffy, Zoro, Robin, Hancock, and Usopp will go ashore. The rest of us, Sanji, Frankie, Chopper, and myself, will stay with the Sunny. We'll find a safe place to anchor nearby, hopefully out of whatever chaos is happening on the island, and maintain contact. Frankie, Can you get the mini-Mary ready for them? Super, leave it to me. Frankie gave a thumbs up. Sanji nodded. You guys be careful. And try not to get sliced or frozen before I can cook you all a victory meal. He gave a pointed look at Zoro. And so, the plan was set. The brief, wondrous detour to the first garden was over. Armed with new experiences, a subtle enhancement for Luffy, and a living connection to an ancient power, the Straw Hats were ready to face the chilling mystery of Punk Hazard. The reconnaissance team prepared to disembark, heading towards the island of fire and ice, and the source of a desperate, crying call. The mini-Mary too, freshly prepped by Frankie, bobbed gently beside the Thousand Sunny. The air still carried a faint metallic tang from the Lightning Island, but now it mingled with a growing sense of anticipation and a grim determination. Luffy, practically vibrating with energy from the sun petal fruit and the thrill of a new mission, was the first to leap onto the smaller vessel. The Kavoth mark on his chest pulsed with a soft, warm light beneath his shirt, a silent reassurance. All right? Punk Hazard, here we come. Let's go find that crying snail and the choppy samurai. Zoro followed, his 3 swords strapped to his waist, his single eye already scanning the hazy silhouette of Punk Hazard on the horizon. Hope he's worth the trip. Robin boarded with her usual serene grace, a small satchel of supplies slung over her shoulder. Her mind was already piecing together the fragmented information. A sealed government island, extreme temperatures, a rogue samurai, and desperate pleas for a boss. It was a puzzle she was eager to unravel. Usopp, armed with his Kuro Kabuto and a pouch filled with pop greens, took his place, albeit with slightly less enthusiasm. Just so we're clear, he muttered, adjusting his goggles, if things get too crazy, I'm deploying the strategic retreat via feigning sudden narcolepsy maneuver. It's a classic for a reason. Hancock was the last to board, her presence adding an air of regal authority to the small reconnaissance team. Salome, her giant snake weapon, was not with her for this stealthier approach, but her mastery of haki and her own formidable combat skills were more than sufficient. Luffy-sama, she said, her voice calm but firm, I shall ensure no harm befalls you from any cowardly ambush. Nami leaned over the railing of the Sunny. Be careful, all of you. That island is bad news. Keep the Den Den Mushi open, and if anything seems too dangerous, get back here immediately. You got it, Nami, Luffy grinned, giving a thumbs up. We'll call if we find any treasure, or any good meat. Focus on the mission, Luffy, Nami sighed, though a small smile played on her lips. Frankie gave a final super wave. Mini-Mary's all tuned up, she'll get you there safely. Chopper waved his tiny hooves frantically. Don't get hurt, and if you find anyone injured, bring them back so I can treat them. Sanji, leaning against the railing with a cigarette, called out, Oi, Marimo, try not to get them all killed before lunch. Robin Schwan, Hancock-chan, take care of yourselves. Luffy, Usopp, don't do anything too stupid. With final farewells, Usopp started the Mini-Mary's engine, and the small boat began to cut through the choppy New World waters, heading directly for the ominous, two-toned island of Punk Hazard. From the Sunny, they watched the small craft recede, a knot of worry and anticipation in their chests. As the Mini-Mary 2 drew closer, the stark division of Punk Hazard became terrifyingly clear. One half of the island was a hellscape of towering infernos, rivers of molten rock, and skies choked with black, volcanic smoke. The other half was an Arctic wasteland, encased in colossal glaciers, jagged mountains of ice, and swept by blizzards that howled with unnatural fury. A strange, hazy line in the very center of the island seemed to be where these two extreme climates clashed, creating a perpetual, violent weather front. Whoa! Luffy breathed, his eyes wide as he took in the spectacle. It really is half burning and half freezing. How does that even happen? The reports of the duel between Admirals Akainu and Aokiji. Robin mused, her gaze sweeping the devastated landscape. It was said their battle here permanently altered the island's climate. This is likely the result, their logia powers, fire and ice, clashing on such a scale that they terraformed the island into this extreme dichotomy. So, two really strong guys had a big fight, and the island got stuck like this? Usopp gulped. That's terrifying. What kind of monsters were they? Zoro merely grunted, his gaze fixed on the burning half. A good place to test your endurance. Hancock surveyed the island with a critical eye. Such destructive power, unleashed without restraint. It is a testament to the terrifying capabilities of those at the pinnacle of the world government's forces. The Mini-Mary approached the burning side first, as the distress call had mentioned some survivors were there. The heat was already intense, even from a distance. They navigated through plumes of steam rising from where lava met the sea, looking for a safe place to land. Meanwhile, on the frozen side of Punk Hazard, earlier, a pair of disembodied legs, clad in the lower half of a samurai's hakama and geta sandals, sprinted erratically through a desolate, snow-swept plain. They moved with a surprising speed and agility, occasionally stumbling but righting themselves quickly. These were, of course, the lower half of Kinnaman, separated by Trafalgar Law's op-op fruit powers. Not far behind, a group of Caesar Clown's hazmat-suited underlings, armed with gas rifles, pursued the legs with a mixture of frustration and fear. "There it goes again," one guard yelled. "Don't let it get away, Master Caesar wants all parts of that samurai contained." "How can a pair of legs be so fast?" another complained, panting in the frigid air, and it kicked Henderson right in the gas mask. "Just shoot it, tranquilize it, whatever, I don't want to get shambled by that surgeon guy again if we lose it." The legs, seemingly with a mind of their own, dodged a tranquilizer dart and then, with a surprising leap, kicked out, sending one of the pursuing guards sprawling into a snowdrift. They then disappeared over a jagged ice ridge. Meanwhile, also on Punk Hazard, within the ruins of a research facility on the burning side, a different scene of chaos was unfolding. A terrified, low-level underling of Caesar's, let's call him Cinders, was scrambling backward, trying to escape a different, equally bizarre threat. "And no, stay back, I don't have any more food," Cinders shrieked. Before him was the top half of a samurai, Kinnamon's torso, head, and arms, seemingly floating or dragging itself along the ground. He was currently wielding a pilfered meat cleaver with surprising ferocity, his face contorted in a mixture of anger, desperation, and a distinct, rumbling hunger. He wasn't intentionally cutting people up in a malicious way. He was usually just trying to get food or escape, but his desperate, erratic actions, combined with his bizarre, bisected state, were terrifying to Caesar's grunts. "Where is Momonosuke?" Kinnamon's top half roared, his voice hoarse. "And what have you done with my legs? Give me food, and tell me where my son is, you scoundrel!" He lunged, and Cinders yelped, barely dodging a swipe of the cleaver. It was this kind of panicked encounter that had led to the garbled message about a samurai cutting people up. It was during one of these chaotic encounters, when another grunt had his boss on a den mushi, perhaps a lower-level supervisor, that the crying call had been made, mixing up the fear of Kin's top half with the general misery of the island and the unrelated for that specific call, but present on the island, actions of law. Back on the Mini-Mary 2, as Luffy's group disembarks on the burning side. Luffy jumped onto the hot, black rock, his sandals sizzling slightly. "All right, we're here. Now, where are those crying guys and that samurai?" Usopp scanned the desolate landscape with his goggles. "This place is a nightmare. I don't see anyone, just lava and smoke." Robin knelt, examining the ground. Footprints. Relatively fresh and varied. Some are heavy, booted, likely guards. Others are smaller, more panicked. She looked towards a series of scorched, ruined buildings nearby, remnants of an old facility. The signal seemed to be coming from this general direction. "Let's check out those broken buildings," Luffy decided. "Maybe someone's hiding in there." "Stay alert," Zoro cautioned, "high swords. This place feels wrong." Hancock nodded. "The air is heavy with despair and residual fear. Something terrible has indeed happened here." As they began to move inland, navigating carefully around fissures venting sulfurous steam and rivulets of molten rock, Usopp suddenly yelped, pointing. Look, what in the grand line is that?" Scrambling awkwardly but quickly over a pile of twisted metal debris, was a sight that made even Luffy blink in surprise. A pair of samurai hakama-clad legs, running on their own, with no torso attached. They seemed to be heading in their general direction, though perhaps not intentionally at them. "Whoa!" Luffy exclaimed, his eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. Legs? Just legs. Are they lost? She. This island is already super weird? Zoro raised an eyebrow. Well, that's a new one. Robin's eyes widened slightly, a spark of academic interest igniting. Fascinating. A seemingly sentient, detached lower body. This could be the work of a devil fruit user with unique surgical or separation capabilities. Hancock looked on with a mixture of surprise and distaste, an unnatural state of being. Usopp, however, was already backing away. Nope. Running legs with no body. That's where I draw the line. That's classic horror movie stuff. We are not following the haunted samurai pants. The disembodied legs, perhaps sensing the new group or simply continuing their flight path, stumbled slightly, then corrected and sprinted past them, disappearing behind a plume of black smoke. Luffy, naturally, was intrigued. Hey, wait up, legs, where are you going? He started to give chase. Luffy, wait! Nami would have yelled, but Nami wasn't there. Robin, however, put a restraining hand on his arm. Robin's voice, calm and analytical, pulled Luffy back from his immediate urge to chase the disembodied legs. Captain San, as intriguing as that is, our priority should be the source of the distress signal. Those legs, while bizarre, did not appear to be the samurai described as cutting people up. That description implied a torso and arms capable of wielding a weapon. Luffy pouted for a second, the image of the running legs clearly having captivated his sense of the absurd. Then he grinned. Okay. You're right, Robin. Business before super weird running pants. But if we see him again, I want to ask how they run so fast without a bud to push off with. The group refocused, continuing their cautious advance towards the skeletal remains of the old research facility. The heat radiating from the ground was intense, and the air was thick with the smell of sulfur and chemicals. A grim reminder of the island's past as a world government science outpost. Twisted metal girders jutted from the earth like the ribs of a fallen beast, and shattered remnants of buildings lay strewn across the volcanic rock. Meanwhile, deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the largely intact, but repurposed, research facility on Punk Hazard, Trafalgar Law stood before a complex control panel in what appeared to be a laboratory, his fingers flying over arcane dials and glowing screens left behind by Vegapunk's teams. The room was chilled, a stark contrast to the burning landscape outside, yet not as frigid as the island's icy half. He was focused, his expression unreadable as he monitored various data streams. The sad production, Caesar Clown's current obsession, was a key part of his own intricate scheme. Suddenly, Law paused. His head tilted slightly, his senses, sharpened by his devil fruit and his keen intellect, picking up on something new. Not a visual, not yet, but a series of powerful, distinct hockey signatures entering the island's periphery on the burning side. They were strong, uncoordinated in a way that suggested a group rather than a military unit, and possessed a chaotic, almost untamed energy he hadn't anticipated. New arrivals. He mused internally, a flicker of something unreadable in his gray eyes. Strong ones. Not Caesar's usual rabble, and not Marines. At least, not any I recognize. He hadn't seen them, nor did he know their identities yet, but their presence was a ripple in the pond, an unscheduled variable. His lips curved into a subtle, almost predatory smirk. This island grows more crowded. Let's see how this complicates Caesar's little kingdom. And my own plans. He returned his attention to the control panel, but a part of his mind was now cataloging these new, potent signatures. Flashback. Aboard a G5 Marine battleship, en route to Punk Hazard, sometime after the Straw Hats entered the New World. Vice Admiral Smoker stood on the deck of his G5 battleship, the wind whipping his white hair. His expression was grim as he stared out at the turbulent New World seas. Beside him, Tashigi adjusted her glasses, looking over a report. We've had confirmed sightings, sir, Tashigi said, from multiple sources. Pirates fleeing Fishman Island. They all report the same thing. Straw Hat Luffy was there. And while the details are confused, it seems he was involved in the overthrow of the new Fishman pirates and had some interaction with Princess Shirahoshi. Smoker took a long drag from his 2 cigars. Straw Hat. Every time that Brad shows up, chaos follows. Fishman Island. He wouldn't just pass through quietly. He remembered the reports about the Ryugu Palace incident, the alliance with Jinbe. He knew Luffy. Wherever he went, the established order was shaken. We were already tracking his general trajectory into the new world, Smoker continued, but this narrows it down. And then there's this. He tapped a Den Den Mushi on the railing, which had a distinctly troubled look on its face. Our communications unit intercepted a fragmented emergency broadcast a short while ago, sir, a G5 Marine reported from nearby. It was weak, civilian by the sound of it. Mentioned being trapped on punk hazard, extreme cold, and a samurai attacking people. Tashigi looked up, surprised. Punk hazard? But that island is strictly off limits. It's supposed to be entirely uninhabitable after what happened between Aokiji-san and Akainu-sama. Smoker nodded, his eyes narrowed. Exactly. An off-limits island, a distress call, and Straw Hat likely in this quadrant of the New World. Too many coincidences. He remembered the call Luffy had made to him from Fishman Island. The boy's audacity. That idiot. He'd run headfirst into a disaster zone if he thought it sounded like an adventure. He exhaled a cloud of smoke. Change course. We're heading for Punk Hazard. If Straw Hat is there, or heading there, I want to know why. And if there are civilians in distress on a sealed government island, G5 will investigate. Something isn't right about this. He also knew that communications with Marine headquarters were notoriously unreliable in this sector of the New World. Especially around an island with such a disrupted magnetic field as Punk Hazard. They would likely be on their own. End flashback. Back with Luffy's group on the burning side of Punk Hazard. Unaware of the marine vessel also converging on their location, or of Trafalgar Law's distant, calculating awareness, Luffy's reconnaissance team pressed deeper into the ruins. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger, now mixed with a faint, sweet, and cloying chemical odor that made Usopp wrinkle his nose. What's that smell? Usopp gagged. It's like rotten fruit and burning plastic. Robin sniffed delicately. I recognize some of the compounds. These are byproducts of advanced chemical experimentation, likely volatile. This facility was indeed involved in sciences the world government would prefer to keep hidden. They rounded a collapsed wall and found themselves in what might have once been a large courtyard or loading area. Several large, metallic containers, now rusted and broken, lay scattered about. And in the center of the courtyard, huddled behind one of these containers, they saw movement. Someone's there, Luffy whispered loudly, pointing. Before anyone could suggest a stealthy approach, round his mouth. Oi, are you the guys whose snail was crying? We're here to help. And are you getting cut up by a samurai? Luffy's booming, if well-intentioned, announcement echoed through the ruined courtyard. The whimpering from behind the rusted container intensified, followed by a distinct, albeit muffled, series of sounds. PFFFT, PFFT, PFFT, Puant. Usopp stared, his jaw slack. Did that container just talk back in farts? Luffy blinked, then his eyes widened in delighted realization. She, it's the legs, the running pants, they're trying to say something. Robin, despite the absurdity, managed a thoughtful frown. A rudimentary form of communication. Perhaps, Morse code via flatulence, highly unorthodox, but given the circumstances. Hancock looked utterly bewildered, a rare crack in her regal composure. This island defies all decorum. Zoro simply grunted, unimpressed by the method of communication. If it's got something to say, it should say it with its chest, if it had one. Before they could decipher the gaseous message, a new sound ripped through the air, a monstrous, guttural roar that vibrated the very ground beneath their feet, far more powerful than any volcanic rumble. From behind a colossal, half-melted gantry crane at the far end of the courtyard, a shadow rose, vast and terrifying. With a deafening screech of tearing metal, a massive, scaly head emerged, followed by a long, serpentine neck. It was a dragon, a classic Western-style dragon, with crimson scales, enormous leathery wings, and eyes like molten gold. It let out another earth-shaking roar, smoke and embers billowing from its nostrils. A dragon? Usopp shrieked, his eyes threatening to pop out of his head. A real, fire-breathing dragon? We are so screwed. He immediately dropped into a combat crouch. Kuro Kabuto aimed, though his hands were shaking. Luffy's eyes, however, lit up like Christmas trees. "Hua, a dragon, so cool, I wanna ride it, or eat it, or both." Zoro grinned, his hand instinctively going to his swords. "Now that's more like it." Robin's eyes, though wide, held a spark of intense academic fascination. A genuine dragon. Remarkable. They were thought to be purely mythological creatures, or at best, long extinct. Hancock, while surprised, quickly assessed the threat. "It appears hostile. Luffy-sama, permit me to." But then they noticed something even stranger. Perched precariously on the dragon's massive head, clinging to its horns, were the samurai-styled torso. It seemed to be attached to the neck of the dragon, controlling it or more like aggravating it in action. The torso. "It's controlling the dragon," Luffy pointed, laughing. "Shishishi. That's the weirdest team-up ever." Usopp just stared. "The farting pants are driving a dragon? Okay, I've officially seen everything, can we go home now?" The dragon, under the agitated guidance of Samurai lower half, spotted the Straw Hats. Its molten eyes narrowed, and it let out a targeted roar, unleashing a torrent of searing fire directly at them. "Scatter!" Robin yelled. Luffy, still in his Nika form, simply laughed and stretched his body into a giant, spring-like coil, bouncing out of the fire's path. Gomu Gomu no Nika sprain. Zoro dashed to the side, the heat scorching the ground where he'd stood. Hancock used her incredible speed to evade, her expression one of annoyance rather than fear. Usopp yelped and dove behind a piece of wreckage, firing a pop green. Green star. Skull exploding grass. The projectile hit the dragon's snout, causing a small, irritating explosion that made it roar in anger but did little real damage. The terrified grunts who had been hiding behind the container, the ones Luffy had initially called out to, seized the distraction. "And now's our chance. Run!" They scrambled out, trying to flee the courtyard, their earlier fear of the choppy samurai, now completely overshadowed by the rampaging dragon. The dragon, irritated by Usopp's attack and further agitated by the legs stomping on its head, turned its attention back to the Straw Hats. It reared back, preparing another fiery assault. But before it could, Zoro had already closed the distance. "You're big," he said, a predatory glint in his eye, "but let's see how you handle this. Santoryu Ogi. Ichidai Senzen Daisen Sakai." With a blinding series of slashes, Zoro unleashed his powerful technique. The air itself seemed to ripple as his haki-infused blades carved through the dragon's thick scales. The dragon let out a sound that was half roar, half agonized shriek, as deep gashes appeared across its chest and neck. It stumbled, its fiery breath dying in its throat. Simultaneously, from the other side, Luffy had bounced high into the air. "My turn, Mr. Dragon." Gomu Gomu no Nika gigant stamp. His Nika-flamed foot, enlarged to colossal proportions and imbued with armament haki, slammed down onto the dragon's head with incredible force. The impact was tremendous. The dragon's eyes rolled back, and it crashed to the ground with a thunderous boom that shook the entire courtyard, narrowly missing the fleeing grunts. The samurai legs, dislodged by the force of Luffy's attack, went flying, landing in a heap near where Zoro stood over the now fallen beast. The dragon lay twitching, clearly defeated. "Shishishi. We got it," Luffy cheered, landing lightly. Usopp peeked out from his hiding spot. You took down a dragon? Just like that?" The surviving Caesar grunts, who had paused in their escape to witness the unbelievable takedown, stared in terrified awe. One of them fumbled for a Den Mushi. We have to tell him. We have to tell Master Caesar. We're under attack by some incredibly strong pirates. They just defeated the dragon." Before he could dial up the call, a blur of motion. Zoro was suddenly there, the tip of Shisui resting lightly against the grunt's throat. His single eye was cold. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. Now, tell us what's going on here. Who's this Master Caesar, and why are you all so scared of a pair of running pants?" The other grunts froze, their fear of the dragon-slaying pirates now eclipsing everything else. They dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Luffy, meanwhile, poked the fallen dragon with his foot. "Wow! It's even bigger up close, Sanji. Is dragon meat good?" Forgetting Sanji wasn't with them. He then spotted the samurai legs, which were now trying to get up, albeit unsteadily. "Oi, legs? That was some awesome dragon riding. You guys okay?" The legs responded with a series of agitated, almost indignant sounding farts. PFFFT, PUUT punt, FFFWUMP. Robin, ever the decipherer, tilted her head. It seems offended. Perhaps it's trying to convey that it was its dragon, and it was doing just fine warding off its pursuers before we interfered? Hancock wrinkled her nose slightly at the gaseous communication, a most undignified dialect. Luffy, however, was laughing. She, it's a feisty pair of pants. Zoro efficiently disarmed the terrified grunts and tied them up with some salvaged cable. They're not saying much, too scared. Something about a master who experiments on people, and they were trying to capture those legs because they belong to a samurai their master wants. A samurai their master wants, Robin mused, looking at the twitching legs. Perhaps these legs are connected to the choppy samurai from the distress call. Luffy, whose stomach suddenly rumbled loudly, looked at the massive dragon. This thing's gotta be good to eat. It's huge. He started imagining dragon steaks. While Sanji wasn't there, Luffy wasn't entirely incapable of roasting meat over a volcanic vent if he was hungry enough. As if summoned by the thought of food, the air near the fallen dragon shimmered, and Sanji would have appeared. But since he isn't, Luffy would just have to make do. "Okay, new plan," Luffy declared, already looking for a good fire source among the lava flows. "First, we have a dragon barbecue. Then, we find the rest of that samurai and help those crying guys. He the D8 surroundings. And we gotta check out that building those guys ran into." He pointed to a small, somewhat intact outpost-like structure near the edge of the courtyard where the grunts had been attempting to report. The immediate threat of the dragon was gone, replaced by the prospect of a massive meal and the lingering mystery of the disembodied samurai and the shadowy master of punk hazard. They were making their presence known, and the island's secrets were slowly beginning to unravel. The next step was to investigate that outpost, and then, perhaps, brave the transition to the island's frozen, equally perilous other half. Luffy, despite the heat of the burning side, felt no discomfort, his Nika flames and the subtle energy of his Shinigami fruit creating a personal equilibrium. The others, however, were definitely feeling the oppressive heat, fanning themselves and already looking forward to the, hopefully, cooler interior of the island. Luffy's declaration of a dragon barbecue was met with enthusiasm primarily from himself. While the others were intrigued by the prospect of dragon meat, the immediate priority was information. Zoro quickly persuaded the bound Caesar grunts to spill what little they knew about the outpost building. It was a minor surveillance and control station, mostly automated, but it had communications and possibly some data on the facility's layout. Luffy, his hunger sated by the surprisingly tasty, if hastily cooked, dragon meat, wiped his mouth. "All right. That was a good snack. Now, let's find those crying guys and the rest of that samurai." He looked towards the massive, central lake that, according to the crude map they'd found in the dragon's presumed territory, or perhaps near the grunts, separated the burning and frozen halves of Punk Hazard. The map showed a way across over there. The Kavoth mark on his chest pulsed faintly, and he felt invigorated, the lingering heat of the burning side barely registering on him. His crewmates, however, were already feeling the oppressive heat radiating from the lava flows and scorched earth, fanning themselves and sweating profusely. The prospect of entering an even colder region was not appealing without proper gear. "Are we sure about this, Luffy?" Usopp asked nervously, already dreading the temperature shift. "We're not exactly dressed for a blizzard." He gestured to their standard New World attire, which was hardy but offered little protection against extreme cold. The distress call mentioned some were on the frozen side, Robin reminded them, her expression calm but her eyes acknowledging the potential hardship. And that seems to be where the main facility is located. Zoro just grunted, "Cold, hot, doesn't matter. Trouble is trouble." Hancock, though clearly uncomfortable in the intense heat of the burning side, simply stated, "Where Luffy-sama goes, I shall follow. The elements are but a trifle." They began the trek towards the lake. The transition zone was a disorienting hellscape of swirling mist, where gouts of superheated steam from the lava fields met howling, ice-laden winds from the frozen plains. The temperature fluctuated wildly with every step. As they finally crossed a precarious, half-melted, half-frozen land bridge spanning the vast, steaming central lake, they were hit by the full force of Punk Hazard's icy wrath. The temperature plummeted with shocking speed. Gone was the oppressive heat, replaced by a soul-chilling cold that bit through their clothes like needles. The ground was a treacherous expanse of slick ice and deep, powdery snow. Jagged mountains of pure ice clawed at the bruised sky, and the wind howled like a banshee, driving razor-sharp ice particles against their exposed skin. FFF freezing, Usopp wailed, his teeth chattering so hard he could barely speak. His nose was already turning red, and he hugged himself tightly, trying to generate some warmth. I can't feel my fingers, or my T-toes, or my sense of self-preservation. Robin, despite her stoic demeanor, was visibly shivering, her breath misting heavily in the frigid air. She wrapped her arms around herself, the thin material of her clothes offering little resistance to the penetrating cold. This is far more severe than I anticipated. Hypothermia will be a genuine risk if we're exposed for too long. Zoro, his jaw clenched tight, pushed through a snowdrift, his usual resilience tested by the sheer, unrelenting cold. Every breath was an icy shock to his lungs. He could feel his muscles stiffening. Hancock, her lips tinged with blue, her movements less fluid, pressed instinctively closer to Luffy. Even her regal pride was struggling against the elemental fury. Luffy-sama. This cold is unnatural. It pierces to the bone. Luffy, however, stood amidst the swirling snow and biting wind, his Nika flames still burning brightly around him, a beacon of white fire in the icy gloom. He looked at his shivering, miserable crewmates with concern. Huh? Oh, yeah? It is pretty chilly out here, isn't it? The extreme cold, as before, barely affected him. His dual devil fruit nature, the sun god's inherent warmth and the Shinigami's affinity for the cold end, rendered him almost immune. Seeing their distress, he grinned reassuringly. Shi, don't worry, guys, I told ya, I can help. He spread his arms wide, and the white Nika flames around him seemed to expand, not with aggressive heat, but with a soft, encompassing radiance. The fire lost its searing edge, becoming a gentle, caressing warmth that pushed back against the icy wind, creating a small pocket of relative comfort around them. It was like stepping into the subtle, welcoming glow of a hearth on a winter's night. Ah! Usopp sighed, a wave of profound relief washing over him as the life-giving warmth touched his frozen limbs. Luffy. You're a miracle, a walking, talking, super-powered bonfire. I take back half the bad things I've ever thought about your recklessness. Robin allowed herself a small, grateful smile, the shivering easing from her frame. Your abilities continue to be a source of wonder, Captain San. This warmth, it is most welcome. Hancock leaned closer into the comforting aura, her color slowly returning. Luffy-sama's radiance. It truly is a gift to all who stand with him. Even Zoro visibly uncoiled, the stiffness in his muscles lessening as the gentle heat permeated his clothes. He gave a curt nod of acknowledgement towards Luffy. With Luffy now acting as their mobile, personal heat source, the beleaguered reconnaissance team found the frozen wasteland slightly more bearable. The wind still howled, and the ice was still treacherous, but the immediate threat of freezing to death had been significantly reduced. They pressed on, deeper into the icy half of Punk Hazard, following the vague directions from the distress call and the crude map, towards the looming, ominous silhouette of the main research facility. Meanwhile, aboard the Thousand Sunny, anchored in a secluded cove some distance from Punk Hazard's chaos. Nami was at the ship's helm, keeping a watchful eye on the volatile weather patterns surrounding the island. Frankie was running diagnostics on the ship's systems, while Chopper was meticulously organizing his medical supplies, just in case. Sanji was in the galley, preparing a hearty, warming soup, his thoughts on the reconnaissance team. I hope they're okay, Chopper said worriedly, looking out at the distant, two-toned island. Punk Hazard sounds really dangerous. Luffy's with him, Chopper, Frankie said, giving a super thumbs up, and Zoro, Robin, Hancock, and Usopp. They can handle anything. Suddenly, a faint hiss, almost too quiet to notice over the wind, emanated from several vents on the deck. A colorless, odorless gas began to seep into the Thousand Sunny. Nami, usually so attuned to atmospheric changes, was focused on her charts. Sanji was absorbed in his cooking. Frankie was deep in the engine room. Chopper was the first to feel its effects. Huh? Chopper blinked, his nose twitching. I feel sleep, uncontrollable yawn. So tired. His small reindeer body swayed, and he slumped to the deck, fast asleep. Nami looked up from her charts, a wave of drowsiness washing over her. What's happening? I can't keep my eyes open. Her head drooped, and she too soup-bed. Sanji, stirring his soup, felt his knees buckle. This soup needs one more. Zzz. He collapsed beside the stove. Frankie, in the engine room, suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to nap. Super sleepy. Overhaul. He slumped against a console. The sleeping gas, a potent creation of Caesar Clown known as Koro gas, had effectively neutralized most of the Sunny's crew. Hidden figures, clad in hazmat suits and moving with practiced silence, swarmed aboard the Thousand Sunny from a stealthily approaching, low-profile vessel. They were Caesar's underlings tasked with capturing any intruders. They quickly bound the unconscious Nami, Sanji, Frankie, and Chopper. "The master will be pleased," one whispered. 4 live specimens. Strong ones, by the look of them. Another prodded the sleeping Chopper. "This one's strange. A talking raccoon dog? Doesn't matter. Bag him and tag him." They moved through the ship, checking for any other crew members. In the dining area, near the galley, they found Brook. He too had soup bed to the Koro gas, slumped over the table where he might have been composing a new song or perhaps just enjoying a cup of tea. If he still drank tea, his skeletal form was still, his top hat askew, his sword cane resting beside him. The hazmat-suited figures paused, looking at the unconscious skeleton. Is this another one?" one of them asked, poking Brook's bony shoulder with a gloved finger. "It's just a skeleton," another observed, peering closer. "A very well-dressed one, but still, bones." A third one, who seemed to be the leader, scoffed. "The gas even knocked out a pile of bones. Must be stronger than I thought." He then waved a dismissive hand. "Forget it. What's the master going to do with a skeleton? There's no flesh to experiment on, no organs to study. It's useless. Probably just some creepy decoration these pirates picked up." "But it was moving before, wasn't it? When we scouted the ship earlier, from a distance?" the first one said uncertainly. Maybe the wind rattled it. Or maybe it's one of those weird wind-up toys pirates like," the leader replied, already turning away. "We have who we need. These 4 are clearly the living ones. Let's get them to the transport and back to the facility before the gas wears off. The master is impatient." And so, deeming the unconscious Brook to be of no value or simply too mundane in his skeletal state compared to their other captives, Caesar's men left him slumped at the table. They efficiently transferred the still sleeping Nami, Sanji, Frankie, and Chopper to their own vessel and departed, leaving the Thousand Sunny seemingly deserted, save for one slumbering skeleton. A short while later, Brook began to stir, a groan escaping his non-existent throat. The effects of the Koro gas were wearing off. He sat up, his head feeling strangely hollow, which was normal for him, but also fuzzy. Yo-ho-ho-ho. That was an unexpectedly deep nap. I had the strangest dream. I was a Marimo, and Sanji-san was trying to cook me. He blinked his empty eye sockets, looking around the silent dining room. "Hello? Nami-san? Frankie-san? Is anyone about?" A growing sense of unease, a rare feeling for the eternally cheerful skeleton, began to creep in as his calls went unanswered. He rose and began to search the ship. The galley was deserted, Sanji's soup now cold on the stove. The helm was unmanned. Chopper's medical bag lay open on the deck, its contents slightly disarrayed. Nami's maps were scattered. "Oh dear," Brook murmured, his jovial tone completely gone, replaced by a chilling realization. "This is not a prank. This is abduction. My friends. They've been taken." His skeletal hand clenched around the hilt of his sword cane. Filled with a sudden, cold resolve, Brook knew he couldn't just wait. His crewmates were in danger. He spotted one of the Sunny's smaller emergency vessels, a small paddle boat, still secured. It seems a solo rescue mission is in order, yo-ho-ho-ho. Though I do wish I had a bit more muscle for these sorts of things. And perhaps some lungs, so I don't tire so easily from paddling. He chuckled weakly at his own joke, the gravity of the situation weighing on him. He launched the small boat and began to paddle with surprising speed and skeletal determination towards the ominous, two-toned island of Punk Hazard, following the faint, lingering scent of the abductor's vessel, or perhaps just a gut feeling, as skeletons don't have particularly good noses. After a harrowing journey through the icy waters, avoiding treacherous ice floes, Brook managed to make landfall on the frozen side. He shivered, despite having no flesh to feel the cold. Yo-ho-ho. So chilly. It chills me right to my bones. Though, I suppose that's all I have. As he stumbled through a narrow ice pass, he suddenly heard a roar of anger and the distinct clang of metal. Peeking around an icy corner, he saw a bizarre sight. The top half of a samurai, dragging himself along the ground with his arms, was furiously attacking what looked like nothing. No, the samurai was swinging his sword wildly at the air, shouting, "Foul fiend! Unhand me! Where have you taken my noble lower half?" The samurai torso, Kin, Emin, bellowed, swinging a katana. "Goodness me," Brook observed. "A talking torso? This island is truly full of surprises." He stepped out. "Excuse me, Sir Samurai Torso. Might you have seen some ruffians abducting a lovely navigator, a swirly-browed cook, a super shipwright, and a small, fluffy doctor?" Kinnamon's top half whirled around, his eyes fixing on Brook. For a moment, he just stared, his anger replaced by sheer, dumbfounded shock at the sight of a walking, talking skeleton in a top hat. Then, his warrior instincts kicked in. A talking skeleton? A demon? Another of this cursed island's horrors? Prepared to be exorcised, foul spirit? Kinnamon, despite his compromised state, launched himself at Brook, katana flashing. "Yo-ho-ho-ho, a misunderstanding, I assure you," Brook yelped, parrying the surprisingly swift strikes with his sword cane. Their blades clashed in the icy canyon. Kinnamon was strong, his swordsmanship skilled even without his legs. Brook, a former fencing champion, held his own, his lighter frame and swift movements making him a difficult target. "My word, you're quite persistent for half a man," Brook quipped, leaping back from a powerful slash. "Silence, apparition, I shall send you back to the netherworld," Kinnamon roared. After a few minutes of clashing steel, Brook realized that while he could likely hold his own, defeating this enraged, and understandably confused, Samurai Torso would be a protracted affair, and his primary mission was to find his crew. "My sincerest apologies, Sir Torso, but I really haven't the time for this," Brook declared. With a nimble feint and a burst of speed only a skeleton of his lightness could achieve, he disengaged and began to run. A strategic withdrawal, yo-ho-ho-ho. "Cowardly spirit. Come back and face my righteous fury," Kinnamon bellowed after him, though giving chase without legs was proving difficult. Brook ran, his skeletal legs pumping with surprising speed, deeper into the frozen wastes of Punk Hazard, hoping to pick up a trail of his abducted crewmates. The icy wind howled around him, and the terrain was treacherous, but his determination was absolute. As he rounded a large, jagged outcrop of ice, he skidded to a halt, his non-existent breath catching in his, also non-existent, throat. Before him stood a formidable group, blocking his path. They were unmistakably some of Caesar Clown's enforcers, bizarrely altered. The most imposing figure among them was a large, powerfully built man with a thick, tangled brown beard that flowed down his chest. His expression stern and body was that of a massive, scaly brown alligator, its powerful tail swishing slowly in the snow, kicking up small flurries. He carried a large, curved blade with an air of authority. Flanking him were several other figures, all of them centaur-like in appearance. Some had the powerful lower bodies of horses, snorting and stamping impatiently in the cold, while another had the lithe, muscular hindquarters of what looked like a large predatory cat. They were armed with an assortment of crude spears, nets, and clubs, and their eyes, a mixture of human and animalistic, were fixed on Brook with predatory intent. The alligator centaur leader stepped forward, his heavy tread crunching on the ice. He rested the tip of his massive blade on the frozen ground. "Hold it right there, you strange apparition," he boomed, his voice deep and gravelly, carrying easily over the wind. "You've wandered into territory under the protection of the great MasterSizzler clown. I am Brownbeard, leader of this patrol, and captain of my own fearsome crew. Or what's left of it after that traitor Law had his way with us." His eyes narrowed as he scanned Brook from his top hat to his bony toes. "Never seen anything like you. What are you, some kind of cursed spirit?" One of the horse centaurs snorted derisively. "Looks like a pile of bones that forgot it's supposed to be buried, Captain Brownbeard." Another patrol member, a wiry man whose lower half was that of a shaggy mountain goat, licked his chapped lips. "The master might be interested in this one, Captain. An animated skeleton? Something new for his collection, definitely. Or perhaps good material for one of his experiments." The centaur patrol began to spread out, their movements a strange combination of human deliberation and animalistic readiness, clearly intending to encircle Brook and cut off any escape. Brook sighed, the sound barely audible over the wind, and meticulously adjusted his top hat. "Yo-ho-ho-ho. Captain Brownbeard, you say? A pleasure to make your acquaintance, despite the rather chilly reception. And an alligator, no less. My, what a striking combination. Your mother must have been very surprised." He then drew his sword cane, sole solid, its blade gleaming faintly in the icy light. "I'm afraid I'm in a bit of a hurry, however. My friends are in peril, and I really must be on my way. So if you gentlemen would be so kind as to step aside." Brownbeard hefted his massive blade. "Boys, secure him, gently, if you can. The master prefers his playthings intact." The centaur patrol began to close in on Brook, their crude weapons raised, a mixture of predatory hunger and cruel amusement in their eyes. Brook braced himself, soul solid held ready. "Yo-ho-ho-ho, it seems a musical interlude will have to wait. Prepare yourselves, gentlemen, for a chilling performance." Just as the first horse centaur lunged with a spear, a loud, cheerful voice echoed across the icy plain, cutting through the howling wind. "Oi, alligator man, and horse guys, what you doing to our skeleton?" Everyone froze, Brook, Brownbeard, and his entire patrol. They all turned towards the source of the voice. Emerging from a snow-laden ridge, enveloped in a soft, warm aura of white Nika flames that pushed back the biting cold in their immediate vicinity, were Luffy, Zoro, Robin, Hancock, and Usopp. Luffy was at the forefront, grinning broadly, the kavoth mark on his chest pulsing faintly beneath his shirt. Brook's jaw would have hit the ice. "Luffy-san. Everyone, yo-ho-ho-ho. You're here, and looking remarkably warm." He felt a surge of immense relief. Brownbeard stared, his eyes widening in disbelief, then in dawning recognition as he focused on the figure wreathed in flame. He recognized the straw hat, the carefree grin, and the sheer, untamed energy. He'd seen that face on wanted posters, heard tales from other pirates, and even caught glimpses during the chaotic broadcasts from Marineford. You're Straw Hat Luffy," Brownbeard stammered, his bravado faltering slightly. "Fire Fist Ace's little brother, from the Paramount War." The memory of Whitebeard's forces clashing with the Marines, the sheer destructive power unleashed, was still vivid. This was not some random intruder. Luffy bounded forward, his Nika flames gently warming the air around his shivering crewmates. "Yup. That's me, and that's our musician you're bothering." Usopp, his teeth chattering despite the proximity to Luffy's warmth, suddenly noticed something very important about Brownbeard's crew. Hey, Luffy. Look," he stuttered, pointing a trembling finger. "CC clothes. Real, warm-looking C coats and F furs, they all have him." A collective realization dawned on Zoro, Robin, and Hancock, who were still feeling the biting chill despite Luffy's efforts. Zoro eyed the thick, fur-lined cloak Brownbeard wore. HMPH. They do look warm. A dangerous glint appeared in his eye. Robin pulled her own inadequate garment tighter, her gaze lingering on the insulated gear of the centaurs. Indeed. Far more suitable for this climate than our current attire. Her smile was serene, but held a hint of predatory calculation. Hancock, ever regal but undeniably cold, looked at the centaurs' warm outfits with a newfound, almost covetous interest. Such practical attire. It would be a shame for it to be wasted on such uncouth ruffians when Luffy-sama's noble companions are suffering from the cold. Luffy blinked, then looked at his shivering friends, then at the well-dressed centaur patrol. A wide, slightly mischievous grin spread across his Nika-flamed face. Shi. You guys are right. They'd have nice warm clothes, and we're cold. So, I guess we'll just have to borrow them. His tone was cheerful, but the underlying intent was unmistakable. Brownbeard, recovering from his initial shock, bristled at the Straw Hat Captain's audacity. He might be Fire Fist's brother, but this Washi's territory, under Master Caesar. Borrow? These are the uniforms of Master Caesar's elite guard. You'll do no such thing, Straw Hat. You and your bizarre skeleton friend will be coming with us. He gripped his blade tighter. Don't think because you have a high bounty you can just. He didn't get to finish. Gomu no Nika rocket. Luffy launched himself forward, a blur of white flame and elastic energy. Brownbeard barely had time to register the attack before Luffy's hockey-infused fist slammed into his alligator jaw with incredible force. The mighty centaur leader was lifted off his feet, his eyes rolling back, and crashed into a snowdrift with a sound like a collapsing iceberg, his prized coat already looking a little loose. Captain Brownbeard, the other centaurs yelled in shock and outrage. All right, guys, Luffy called back, already eyeing Brownbeard's cloak. Pick a coat, first come, first served. What followed was less a battle and more a swift, brutally efficient clothes drive. Zoro moved like a phantom through the snow. Itoryu. Shi Sun. One-horse centaur found himself suddenly relieved of his warm vest and his consciousness, his sword strike missing Zoro by a mile. Zoro didn't even bother drawing all three swords for most of them. Usopp, emboldened by the prospect of warmth and the presence of his captain, actually got proactive. Green Star. Devil. A pop green erupted into a man-eating plant that latched onto a goat centaur, conveniently stripping him of his insulated trousers in the process. Much to the centaur's horror. Got some pants, Usopp cheered triumphantly. Robin used her powers with chilling efficiency. Cyan Fleur. Delphinium, multiple arms sprouted, disarming and neatly unbuttoning the coats from several struggling centaurs before gently placing them in a pile. Such a crude design, but the insulation appears effective. Hancock, with a disdainful sniff, found herself face to face with the cat-like centaur. Slave Arrow. A flurry of hearts, and the centaur was petrified mid-lunge, his warm, leopard-spotted cloak practically falling into her hands. This pattern is somewhat gaudy, but it will suffice. Brook, Wire retrieved his top hat and was gleefully assisting by tripping up any centaurs trying to flee, his sword cane a blur of polite taps and disarming maneuvers. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Such enthusiasm for sharing, truly, you are all too kind. Within minutes, the entire centaur patrol lay groaning in the snow, disarmed and, more importantly, divested of their warm outer garments. The Straw Hats were now much more comfortably attired, Luffy having claimed Brownbeard's impressive, and surprisingly clean, captain's coat, which was a bit big on him but wonderfully warm. Zoro had a rugged fur-lined vest, Usopp some much-needed insulated trousers and a jacket, Robin a practical, dark-colored cloak, and Hancock had reluctantly draped the leopard print one over her shoulders, already planning how to modify it later. Luffy, snug in Brownbeard's surprisingly comfortable, and Noah's, captain's coat, which billowed around his Nika-flamed form, beamed. Shi, much better. Now we're all warm. He looked down at the groaning, shivering Brownbeard, who was now clad only in his under-tunics, his alligator hide providing little comfort against the icy wind. Thanks for the clothes, alligator man. You guys should get some sleep now. You look tired. Luffy raised a fist, preparing to deliver a thank you punch that would undoubtedly ensure Brownbeard got plenty of rest. Brownbeard, seeing the fist descending and the memories of Fire Fist Ace's terrifying power flashing before his eyes, projected onto Ace's equally terrifying little brother, flinched violently. Wait, hold on, Straw Hat, he yelped, his voice a desperate croak. Don't hit me again. I surrender, completely, utterly. Luffy paused, his fist hovering. Huh? You give up? Yes. Brownbeard blurted out, propping himself up weakly on his alligator elbows. "No more fighting. We're no match for you, clearly." He looked at his similarly declothed and defeated patrol, who were all nodding vigorously, their teeth chattering. We can help you. You said you were looking for the main facility, right? Where MasterSizzler is? I can take you there. I know the way. The safest route, even." Luffy blinked, then lowered his fist. "Oh, you know the way? That's helpful." "The safest route from the man who just tried to capture us," Zoro said skeptically, his hand still on his sword. "He seems genuinely terrified," Zoro-senpai, Usopp whispered, now much warmer in his new gear. "And if he can save us a walk through a blizzard, I'm all for it." Robin observed Brownbeard with a cool, analytical gaze. He is likely telling the truth about knowing the route. His survival here would depend on it. Whether it's the safe Strout Forest remains to be seen, but his cooperation could be convenient. Hancock sniffed. He only offers aid out of cowardice, but if it serves Luffy-sama's purpose. At that moment, Brook, who had been politely ensuring none of the other centaurs tried anything foolish, stepped forward, his usual jovial tone replaced by a grim seriousness. "Luffy-san. Everyone, I have dire news." All eyes turned to the skeleton. "While you were on your Zappy Island detour," Brook began, his voice heavy, "the Thousand Sunny was attacked. A strange gas filled the ship, and everyone fell asleep. Nami-san, Sanji-san, Frankie-san, and Chopper-san. They've been abducted." A stunned silence fell over the group, broken only by the howling wind. Luffy's cheerful demeanor vanished instantly. The warm, gentle aura of his Nika flames flickered, and for a terrifying moment, a raw, oppressive pressure emanated from him. The Kavoth mark on his chest seemed to glow brighter, almost angrily, and the golden rings in his eyes burned with a cold, furious light. The temperature around them, despite his flames, seemed to drop several degrees. It wasn't just the Shinigami fruit's chill. It was the palpable weight of a Yonko-level conqueror's haki, barely restrained, tinged with the righteous fury of Nika. Usopp and even Zoro took an involuntary step back. Hancock's eyes widened, a mixture of concern and fierce pride in her gaze. Robin watched him intently, recognizing the depth of his anger. "Abducted?" Luffy's voice was dangerously quiet, each word like a chip of ice. "Our friends, taken?" Brook nodded grimly. "I was unaffected by the gas, or so their captors believed, thinking me already deceased. Yo-ho-ho. A miscalculation on their part. I saw them. Men in strange suits. They mentioned a master who wanted them alive." The pressure around Luffy intensified. The snow at his feet began to melt rapidly, not from warmth, but from the sheer force of his will, then instantly refreeze into jagged spikes. Brownbeard, witnessing this display, turned an even paler shade of green-brown and began to tremble uncontrollably. His haki. It's even stronger than what I sensed from some of Whitebeard's commanders, Brownbeard thought, terror gripping him. This isn't just Fire Fist's little brother. This is a monster. "This, MasterSizzler," Luffy said, his voice now a low growl, his Nika flames flaring higher, but with a dangerous, almost predatory edge. "He's going to give them back, now." He turned to Brownbeard, his fiery, haki-laden gaze pinning the terrified centaur. "Alligator man. You said you'd take us to his facility. You're going to do that, and you're going to do it fast." Brownbeard, practically whimpering, nodded so vigorously his beard shook. "Why yes, Straw Hat-sama. Right away. The fastest, safest route. I promise, no tricks." Luffy's furious aura receded slightly, though the dangerous glint in his eyes remained. He took a deep, steadying breath, the Kavoth mark on his chest pulsing. "Good. Let's go. My friends are waiting." And so, under the terrified but now utterly compliant guidance of Captain Brownbeard, the newly attired and highly motivated Straw Hat reconnaissance team set off. Their earlier curiosity about Punk Hazard had transformed into a burning urgency. They weren't just investigating a distress call anymore. They were on a rescue mission. And heaven help anyone who stood between Monkey D. Luffy and his abducted Nakama. The frozen hellscape of Punk Hazard was about to experience a different kind of heat. Yay!